Parang kaya mo pa yun na. So,
Okay.
get ready for.
All right. Hi, everybody. It's a very small group in here in person today. So thanks to folks who are joining us on Zoom. Thank you to our interpreters for being here. I will call the meeting to order at 6:35. Shanice, Jonathan's going to take minutes. He's here virtually. So
Okay.
yeah. He'll make sure to go into flames. I know a couple folks are running a little bit late. They'll be here shortly, but could we go ahead and start with interpretation information? Could the Bangla interpreters start by sharing the call-in information, please?
Your conferencing center. Please enter a conference ID followed by pound.
Maybe we'll start with Spanish. It looks like Bangla is getting set up.
Buenas tardes, esta información es para las personas que necesiten servicios de interpretación de español. Pueden marcar al 347-966-4114. Su código de ingreso es el 918-973-884 numeral. De nuevo, las personas que necesiten servicios de interpretación en español pueden marcar el 347-966-4114 y su número de acceso es el 918-937-884 numeral. La información está en el chat. Por favor, una vez ingresen a la reunión, asegúrese de silenciarse para no interrumpir la interpretación. Gracias. Thank you. Spanish is done.
Thanks very much.
Okay,
Mandarin?
I'll do the Bangla announcement. No?
Yeah, go ahead.
গুড ইভিনিং এভরিওয়ান। শুভ সন্ধ্যা সবাইকে। আজকের এই অনুষ্ঠানটি যদি আপনারা বাংলায় শুনতে চান তাহলে আপনারা দয়া করে ডায়াল করুন 347-966-4114। আমি নাম্বারটি আবার বলছি, নাম্বারটি হচ্ছে 347-966-4114। তারপরে আপনারা যে পিন নাম্বারটি দিবেন সেটা হচ্ছে 601-597-159 দিয়ে হ্যাশট্যাগ চাপুন। ধন্যবাদ সবাইকে। Bangla announcement is done.
Thank you. And Mandarin, please. Mandarin interpreters, can you hear me? We're having trouble hearing you.
可以懂我的啊，这收到某啊，Yeah, we every
Sorry, the audio is not good.
如果去这个服务，请打199614 ，ID 号是2104427，请号，我再注意啊，哪位朋友有这个电话的服务的，请拨377967164。ID 号码是2044295，好，谢谢。
Okay, thank you. Your audio was very, very choppy, so you might want to try disconnecting and reconnecting so that we can have a better connection. But if you could put the call-in information in the chat, then folks will be able to see it. So.
Tina, did you see the note in the chat about opening the Bangla line?
Yeah, Shanice is on it.
Okay.
We will get that set up. Thank you so much to all the interpreters for being here. All right, so we'll start with roll call. Not a lot of folks here. I'm going to go ahead and call the roll because our secretary is not here with us tonight. Shanice, were you able to open the Bangla line? Is that okay? Thank you. Ana Maria Aguilar has an excused absence. Angelica Cesario has an excused absence. Jonathan Davis.
I technically can't be here, so I'm absent.
Thank you for being here for discussion. Ken Eby is on his way. Angelica Jadanandan has an excused absence. Kat McKinsey. Present. Thank you for being here. Katina Rogers, present. Ching Sashu.
Yes, present.
Great. And Kara Zwirling-Muller has an excused absence as well. Lots of folks either not feeling well this evening or traveling for the end of the summer break. So I'm going to wear many of the hats tonight. I will start by sharing the public comment protocol and rules of engagement. I'll say a few words of welcome and then I'll turn things over to the superintendent. So our standard public comment protocol, tonight's in-person meeting includes public comment periods that are signaled on the agenda. When you comment, please comment on the topic, respect the privacy of others, and do not include the names of children or staff. Guests who make inappropriate comments will be removed from the meeting. During the public comment period, those attending virtually may raise their hand to comment or indicate in the chat that they would like to speak. We'll do our best to keep an eye on the virtual spaces as well as in the room. Speakers will be called on one at a time and will be allowed 1 minute each. We will hear as many speakers as the time allows. If you have a question outside the comment period, please let us know that as well by raising your hand or writing it in the chat. If we have enough time, we will respond to these additional questions that arise at other points of the agenda. It is possible that not every comment or question will be given time, in which case we encourage you to write to the CEC at cec15@schools.nyc.gov. I'll put that in the chat as well. CEC members also have comment periods on the agenda. Members will also be called upon individually and are permitted 1 2-minute comment or question. All right. So back to my normal hat. Welcome everybody. Thank you to Kat and Jingsa for being here in person with us. Thanks to everybody who's joining us online for tuning in at the tail end of the summer. I hope everyone is able to enjoy these last weeks of warmth and some chaos before the excitement of the new school year begins. We do have a very small meeting tonight, which will require some changes to our agenda. We do not have quorum, so we will not be able to vote on anything on the agenda today. That impacts the resolution as well as a number of items on our business meeting agenda. So just bear that in mind as we're moving through things. Many of these topics will be revisited next month so that we can get the votes that we need. Today during the calendar meeting, we will hear from the superintendent as well as from the Office of District Planning, and we will discuss a preliminary resolution that has been drafted by the Instruction and Programming Working Group. In the business meeting, we will be working towards finalizing the school liaison assignments. We will discuss key roles and responsibilities and some draft community principles that we've been thinking through. And we'll look ahead to events that are happening throughout the district during the school year. I also want to mention, this is especially for any members of the community who might be joining us. We do have several vacant seats that we are looking to fill. As you can tell, it's very difficult to get quorum when we don't have a full council. We have 1 vacancy for a borough president appointee, 1 regular seat for any parent of a child attending a D15 school, and 1 seat for the parent of a child attending a D75 program within the D15 area, as well as 2 seats for high school seniors. If you are interested or know somebody who is, I'm going to put information on how to apply for either of the any of those roles. You can find the links in the you can find links to the application details in the link that I put in the chat. All right, that's all. Raphael, I'll pass it over to you,
Sure.
and then we'll go to ODP after that.
Sure, and mine is really short this month, so you have the presentation. Yeah, just looking ahead, we have Labor Day coming up, our first day back to school, which will be the 10th. Teachers will be back on the 8th, and administrators will be back the week of the 31st. So looking forward to that. And it's the beginning of Hispanic Heritage Month. Half of it's in September, the other half is in October. I want to give a special shout out and thank you to the principals and assistant principals in charge of Summer Rising. Here are all the names of the people who supported in our district. Summer Rising went with a flaw. without a flaw. So excited that that was the case. We can move to the next three slides. District 15's instructional vision, and I'm just going to read it because I want to be clear about where we're moving as a district in terms of instruction. Every student in District 15 deserves access to strong, grade level instruction, every content area, every classroom, every day. Tier 1, which is the core instruction, is the foundation of equity. When instruction is explicit, accessible, and responsive, most students succeed without needing additional intervention. Strengthening our Tier 1 is our most powerful lever for improving student outcomes across the district, which is why you're going to hear a lot this year around how we're focusing on strengthening Tier 1 instruction through explicit and grade level core instruction. So the next slide just talks a little bit about what that looks like. I want to be clear because I know there's a lot of questions about curriculum, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. We are still a problem project-based learning district. That is at the core of what we do in District 15. But within that, to strengthen the Tier 1, which is where all kids get the same access to material, we're going to focus on 6 areas: explicit instruction, responsive teaching, access for all learners, knowledge building, academic discourse, and authentic problem solving. Notice that the authentic problem solving is in orange, and it's the only box that's colored. We want to make sure that we all understand that that is where our project-based learning is, right? For more details, you're going to get the project-based learning one-pager, which is on the bottom. I have a copy of it here that I'm going to give for those of you who are here. Not only is the one-pager around the project-based learning, but on the other side also explains what that looks like. So you will have access to having that information. Nishar, here you go. I'll make sure I get that translated because we still haven't translated those. I'm sorry about that. I normally get everything like that. So in order to do this, one of our main goals for our community this year is to be, I heard in terms of my feedback when I got my feedback as superintendent, is how are we becoming more responsive to our parents in our community around what we're doing, because it seems like some people know and some people don't, right? So we are being intentional about making sure that whatever documents we give, you're also getting copies of it. It's going to be posted on the website. It's going to be posted here, and teachers are going to have access, including for our new teacher induction that's happening in a few weeks. They're going to be shown how to give this material to parents and families as well. So on the next slide is the first resource. We have given this before. It is located on the district website, which you can click on the PowerPoint. But this is the Family Resource Guide for grades pre-K through 2. This is where you're seeing the foundational skills literacy, primarily your phonemic awareness, your phonics, and your fluency. It is translated in the multiple languages. So when you go on there, you can find it in Chinese, you can find it in Bangla, you can find it in Arabic, you can find it in English, and you can find it in Spanish. It's for targeted guidance that's specific to foundational skills, which are the building blocks of learning how to read. So that's for your pre-K to 2. Please note that even though it says pre-K to 2, you could still use this resource for 3rd and 4th graders who might be struggling with phonics and phonemic awareness, especially multilingual learners who may not necessarily have the phonics skills down pat, but might be a 4th grader who still needs to learn those foundational skills in English in order to be successful in reading, right? On the next slide, you have the Math K-5 family guide. This is the guide that was developed in partnership with parents in our district. As I shared with you before, we created a lovely guide. We gave it to some parents, and parents said, yeah, this is terrible. This is not helping us. So they gave us feedback, and from that feedback, we designed this math guide that is also in the multiple languages. It's created to support you alongside the curriculum with the major skills that are necessary in each of the grades K through 5. If you can master those skills, your child's going to have a little bit of an easier time on the grade level. And that's for parents to support their children at home with multiple things. On the next slide, you're going to have the D15's implementation guides for the core curricular. So on the left, you're going to see the guide for Wit and Wisdom for the Wit and Wisdom schools. Next to that, you will see the HMH guide for the HMH schools. Next to that, you're gonna see the K to 5 math guide, which we shared about the instructional math that's expected to happen. And then we also have one for grades 6 through 8 in Algebra 1. For
And these are
parents,
sorry, for parents or for
these,
teachers?
these are for
Yeah.
teachers,
for
but
teachers.
also for
Mhm.
parents to use.
Got it.
So they're for both.
Mhm.
It's just giving you a basic understanding of what's happening in your child's classroom,
Okay.
but also for you to know what's the things that they're doing in their classroom and how to support them in their classroom. And that's also in the multiple languages.
Mhm.
On the next, so those are the guides that we provided to the community, and we're gonna work harder with our parent coordinators to ensure not only are they giving them out, but that teachers are also sharing these tools with parents at parent conferences, at meetings, when they're having one-to-ones during their parent teacher time, their family engagement time. So be on the lookout for that. If you're not seeing it, let us know so that we can communicate to those schools to do that. So right here, you're gonna see the 26-27 overarching district comprehensive education plan. These plans are all aligned for the entire district. So all schools are aligning their goals, their CEP goals, their comprehensive education plan goals for their individual schools to these goals. And essentially, students in the lowest growth categories across K to 8, with particular attention to Ls, students with IEPs, and economically disadvantaged students. Strengthening tier 1 literacy instruction is at the core. We want to make sure that schools are using high quality instructional materials, which is what HQIM stands for. We want to do explicit modeling and guided practice and purposeful checks for understandings. So what that means is in some schools you go to and you see the teachers saying, thumbs up if you agree, or thumbs up if that's the right answer, and they'll do this. And what happens with every kid? Every kid goes thumbs up because I'm not going to put my thumb down, because if I put my thumb down, it means I don't know the answer. We want to move away from that types of checks for understanding and say, partner A, explain what partner B said. Partner B, what did partner A say in your conversation? The accountability around the conversations, right? So we're moving towards doing that. And then we have our learning labs and our walkthroughs, where we're having teachers go in cohorts to different schools that they're attached to that are similar but also different to learn from one another. And they have their own problem of practice based on what their school's data is saying they need to work on. The second one is the accelerated math. We're focusing on students with IEPs and Ls. We want to strengthen New York City Solves IM implementation. Let me be clear. The only mandate for IM, illustrative math, is in middle school. That's been already, this is now year 3 that we're going in that. And I just want to point out that based on state data, every middle school, with the exception of one, made gains in the mathematics in illustrative math, using the illustrative math. Our elementary schools have the access to choose which math they're using, and many of them are either using Eureka Square or illustrative math for the most part, right? So we want to make sure that we're strengthening that. We're strengthening MTSS, which is multi-tiered systems of support, meaning what are some other things that we need to use to help kids be able to access that curriculum? Next is improving economically disadvantaged Black students and economically disadvantaged Hispanic or Latinx students and students in temporary housing. We've done a phenomenal job in this district around chronic absenteeism and improving attendance, particularly for those groups. But we're a long way from meeting the mark so that they are comparative to their white and Asian counterparts. So that's work that we have to do as a district to improve attendance. And those are some of the things that we're going to be doing. And then for belonging and safety and support, we still need to address our Black students and students with disabilities as using preventative and restorative practices, because what we're seeing in our ORS data or OSYD data, which tells us what's happening at schools and incident reports, we're still seeing an overwhelming number of especially students with IEPs being suspended compared to the other students. And so we want to address that gap. So that's why it's part of our district education plan. And that forces every school to touch on these particular points to support in the individual schools. So on the next slide, I really wanted to talk about the New York City school survey result. Now, keep in mind, and I will keep this in mind as well, that there was a certain number of people that fill this out. And sometimes those that fill it out are usually the most concerned about what's going on or have the most frustrations about what's going on, and they usually report the most. With that being said, our goal is to try to push more people to get these surveys done for next school year so that we have a better understanding holistically of what the district feels, whether they're positive or not positive about those particular things. And so, what families are telling us on the next slide. These are our areas of strength, and these are opportunities to strengthen. Right? When I think about this, I think about it's basically in the 90 percentiles, but when you think about what parents are saying, families are saying that they want more support for birth to 5. Support with next school or program transitions, or how do we help them get ready for 3K pre-K? That's been a lot of what we've discussed. And I think, Katina, we've also discussed that with a working group that we went to in Trenton, New Jersey, where one of the parents had suggested that we start focusing on how do we support that. I'm starting to look into how we tap into other agencies that provide those specific services and how we can create partnerships with those agencies within our district to do so. Next slide. So what teachers are saying. So when you see what teachers are saying, opportunities to strengthen teacher influence. So where can teachers have more influence in what's going on? Preventing bullying. They're seeing some of these things happen on a constant basis. And they want to find what are some other strategies and ways that we could support outside of just instruction to support teachers in doing that. So those are some of the things that we're going to be working on. I'm focusing on the strengths more. I mean, the areas of opportunity to strengthen versus the areas of strength, because those areas of strengths are there. So we want to focus on the things that we need to work on more. Next slide. What students are saying. So students want, in their individual schools, they want personalized attention and support. That kind of goes back to, if we strengthen tier 1 instruction, we're going to be giving kids what they actually need. Thinking about school facilities and how we're upgrading some of the school facilities in the particular district. And I know that Anthony Salvatore from Division of School Facilities has been working on that stuff. And then course clarity. Middle school students are still struggling with understanding what the course clarities are in order to prepare for when they get to high school and what that's looking like, as opposed to getting a program, being part of the design of what those programs are. And so we're starting to work with some schools and thinking about how do they help students kind of help figuring out how do they choose classes and which classes to choose, and then being placed in those classes as opposed to just being assigned classes. Next slide.
Quick clarifying question while you're moving on. The guides that you shared earlier, the first set of guides were for parents, right? Those were family guides.
All of the guides can be utilized for parents.
And the second set was for teachers. Parents can also use them.
Yes.
For anybody in the community. These are all D15 specific guides.
These are all D15 specific guides that were created to support families with helping their children in whichever ways, and they've also been translated as well.
Okay.
So family engagement. We're doing quarterly priorities aligned to parent coordinator supports. So this year, something different that we're doing is that we're breaking the year up into 4 quarters. September through October is welcome and connecting. Those are the things that we're going to be working on with our parent coordinators to support in their schools. In November through January, it's more about partner for student success. So how are we partnering with the curriculum and academic partnerships, the conferences, community resources, mid-year data and reflection, and then thinking about activation of NISCA accounts and Kids Rising accounts that happens in January. February through April is about empowering and engaging. So the admissions and transitions process, student wellness, attendance, parent leadership, the PTA, SLT participation and elections and community partnerships. And then May through June, transitioning and sustaining and thinking about what do we do with the parent coordinators around family engagement. And the next slide is the family workshops. This is in draft because we're going to be able to provide it to you all and try to get some feedback as to what some additional things that we'd like to see. In the past, CEC and other members of the community might say, we want this, or we've also given out a survey that says, hey, what do you like to see? And then we make shifts and adjustments based on what the community is asking us, as opposed to us just saying what we want to present. And so this is going to be like an active moving target because we will constantly survey to see what parents want and what we would like to do differently. Next slide. The Youth Equity Council this year, on the next slide, is focusing on really building their experience on becoming a change agent and how do they do that in their individual schools and having some of the power to help change decision-making in their school communities as it relates to student well-being and the student experience, so to speak, right?
What grade is it?
We have students from elementary all the way through, our one high school that we have now, yeah. Next slide. And then, yeah, next one. And then these are the events that we do yearly. We have them again. The district workshop, the dates are already there, but we can again add more depending on what's needed. In the past, we've done town halls. What we've moved away from is just doing town halls because it takes away from the CEC. So what we've been doing is when there needs to be a town hall based on whatever topics need to be discussed or something that's coming up, and the CEC has advised us as when those are happening, we'll have a town hall at the pleasure of the CEC. But these are all the events that we have. We have our day of service, our urban debate league, our middle school, elementary debate leagues, arts showcase, the District 15 musical this year, the hiring fair, the STEM exploration. With this year, the recognition ceremony is going to be for the ambassadors. Those are the new people that are the teachers that are going to help lead the work across the districts and the cohorts. And then the field day that we did this particular year, we're going to do again at probably at PS 94 since they have the field.
Nice.
Yeah.
And Jonathan is asking about PBL Day, Project Based Learning Day.
Yeah, the date's not selected yet, which is why you still don't see it up, but that will definitely happen, Jonathan. Next slide. Yeah,
Great, thank you.
that's it.
Amazing. All right, so back to parliamentarian hat. Not particularly gifted at. Hey Ken, how are you?
Everybody, sorry I'm late.
Small group today. Welcome. Thanks for making it. All right, are there any comments or questions from members of the community, either on Zoom, on our translation line, or joining us in the room?
Right back, turn.
As far as surveying the community and what they want. Hundreds of families sent you a letter saying they didn't want mandated curriculum in the in middle school, which is not sitting in. So you didn't even answer that. So I don't really see how you're responsive to what families want.
So I will read a statement that I have aligned to the resolution around the mandated curricula, if you don't mind. Or would you like to hold?
Well, it's definitely gonna be a longer conversation, and I wonder if it's worth.
But I can
waiting
answer
till we
this,
Read the resolution.
And I can answer I can answer the specific question as it relates to that.
Mhm.
There are mandated curriculums that can be for middle schools. IM was one of those through New York City Solves, which you are aware of that is city wide. And in the beginning in the process, when we went through this, we went through the engagement process through the CEC and through town halls that I specifically conducted with my team, with our staff, with principals. We did the advisories, we did community outreach, we had community conversations. You can go back to the several CEC meetings that I've had, including town halls that have been recorded that are on the district's website or on the CEC's website of the engagement process we went through to engage the community. Rather than go straight into the illustrative math like other districts did in the first phase of the New York City Solves IM curricula, we decided to do that in the second phase. And the reason why we did that in the second phase is because in the year that phase one was rolling it out, we spent time unpacking all of that with our schools and preparing all of our schools to align themselves with the IM curricula. The data clearly shows that the IM curricula has actually moved instruction in our middle schools. Pretty much all of our middle schools have made gains in mathematics in the past 3 years. And that's what we've been seeing, especially specifically, more importantly, to the targeted groups of our multilingual learners, our students with IEPs, and our Black and Brown students across the district.
Statewide, they're not specific to this.
I'm glad you're bringing that up because that is part of my conversation, because the 1 year of the dip which happened this year in terms of ELA, you're right. State data is not the only thing we look at to identify what measures of growth we're doing. I personally don't like looking at just standardized assessment because standardized assessments, for the most part, focuses on proficiency. I'm always more interested on progress because students are going to come in at different ranges. And from my perspective, we need to focus on where kids are and what teachers are doing to help move them to the next level. So I personally focus more on the screener data because the screener data shows more information around growth of a student from where they are to where they're moving based on the instruction that they're getting in their classrooms from their teachers.
Reader math. Middle school.
Say what?
they
I'm sorry.
Throw it. They just answer it however they want to answer the math. The math information isn't accurate. Math comes after math in a way. They're so done because as soon as you get the right answer, it moves you on, moves you on, moves you on. And then there's no answer on math to just say, I don't know. So then you have kids guessing and it's really not accurate data at all.
So, as I stated before, I don't use just one measure. We use multiple measures of data pieces that we have to identify where we are, and that's what we're going to continue to do. That is a citywide thing. This is a citywide expectation. The screeners are citywide expectations. Those are not mandated by me. Those are mandated citywide.
But I don't think we can use math as a way to see if kids are like really.
Those are some indications that help us identify whether or not students are actually moving. They're not perfect. I will not going to disagree with you there, but nothing is.
Lawsuit for their unreliability.
I'm sorry?
They're subject to lawsuit right now, that they are not what they claim to be, that it is deceptive practices.
Okay.
That all of the so-called evidence for them is provided by their own companies.
Okay.
So I think maybe listening to what families, students, and teachers are saying would give you the qualitative data that would say something very different from what the suspect quantitative data
Okay.
is telling.
Thanks. Do we have any other questions from folks who might be joining us on Zoom? I see one person echoed appreciation for the question that you asked. Thank you. All right, and council members, questions?
She wrote down,
Could you speak a little
yeah,
louder? please?
she wrote down whole page of her concern. So I would just brief summary of what she said. She said, according to what she observed, she noticed that although the families were provided by the language service to communicate with the school, however, how much you calculate it is that calculated with the total amount those parents has been provided service, or because according to what she heard from a lot of parents, they still didn't get enough service from the school. And some schools, they have the staff members, they speak Mandarin or speak Spanish, whatever the language, although they can provide some language service for the parents. However, those staff that already have their own jobs, so sometimes they may not provide enough for the parents. So that's how her concern. And also
Which services are you talking about?
the language service.
Language service.
Yes.
Kinsha, is that for 169? Is that for the whole Sunset Park area? Is that specific to a school?
你说的是那个169那个学区，还是整个Sunset Park这个区域的？就是家长有些他们没有办法得到足够的这个语言协助。
没有，基本上就是我们学校会有中文跟西语的人，他们的家庭协调员可以帮助我们翻译。那就是家长如果要使用学校的翻译功能的话，就是很多家长就不太适应那个，而且听的不是很仔细。
就是电话翻译的。
对，电话翻译。
你是指你们那个学校？
没有，就是还有另外其他学校的家长也跟我反馈过。
She says she heard from different parents from not only her school, there are other schools. They also saying that although the staff members are able to provide the language access, however, when school provide the language service, the phone interpreter, they don't provide good enough service, or they don't really truly understand what they were translated to the parents.
Yeah. Kinsha, I'm going to get you the email address of the language service department for the DOE. I'm going to add myself to the email, but I like to add them to the question that you're bringing up to see what they can do to try to better those particular services, because that's a service that's provided by the DOE. And so I want to be able to better kind of understand what's going on with that office and how they could better support.
他给你 email 就是那个部门他们提供那个语言翻译的这个部门，然后你有什么其他的任何的问题，他会包含他的 email，然后你可以把你的问题写给他们，因为他也不了解到底他们提供的服务是怎么样，然后跟你所接收到的这些家长反馈的意见又有多大的出入。
就是你就帮我跟他讲，就是在我参与到其他会议的时候，我就感受到了这一些就是比较难的去接触。就好比你给我翻译，你会给我总结，
对，
哎，我可以理解你想说的。
对，
那我们学校也有会讲中文跟西语的，他们可以提供我们很多的帮助，对，但是他们也有很多的工作嘛，是吧？那我们肯定是需要电话服务。
这个我刚刚讲完了，
是的，所以就是这是我亲身体验到的。
对，这个我刚刚已经跟他讲，所以他要给你那个部门的这个信息，然后你再把你的这些问题跟他们反馈。Yeah. So she was basically saying the same thing that we discussed earlier about the service that although she attended the CCEC meeting and also she faced the people, not parents, staff, she also have all those questions, concerns. That's why she brought up all those.
Sure.
Thanks, Chingsa. I mean, I think something we've definitely seen through your experience is that the services that are meant to be accessible are not always in practice as readily available as parents need them to be. We do have another community question in the chat that I'll just read out loud. Wondering if you could say a little bit more about how the district is planning to go beyond the survey to get input from parents. What kinds of methodologies are you planning to use to understand what families want?
Yeah, so we've done 3 different things. Number one, we've done the regular town halls where we survey parents to find out what they like, what topics they would like to hear in terms of myself and my team or anybody from the DOE to discuss with as it relates to what the needs are of the district at any given particular time. Sometimes we have the survey done earlier on in the year, but then we revisit it again. So another survey ends up going out just to see if there's anything new that has come up or new revelations that have come up. That's one way. The second way that I have done is I've set up with the parent coordinators geographic neighborhood conversations. So last year I spent time in, for example, I did Sunset Park, then I did Park Slope with Windsor Terrace, and then I've done the different sections of the district broken up by neighborhood to be able to hear the concerns of specific neighborhoods. Because sometimes what's happening in a district, because we're so vast and large, might be something different in one neighborhood versus another. So being able to hear communities within their own community to understand what those specific neighborhood needs might be as it relates to how the district supports. So that's a second way that we do. The other way is through the New York City school surveys that we use that particular information. And then also there are other times where we reach out to particular school communities to have parent coordinators bring parents together and we show up to whether it's an SLT meeting, whether it's a town hall at the school. Like last year, I spent about 8 or 9 different schools where there was a lot of things going on that we needed to have discussions, like 516, 124 was another place that I've done, PS 24 when there are certain things that are arising. This past year, I went to BNS to discuss a few things with BNS, and it just depends on what those particular schools are, because some things are school specific, some things are neighborhood specific, and then some things are geographical district specific. So those are the multiple ways that we try to get input and understand what the community is asking for. Also, another forum is this here, the CEC, where when you guys provide us input and when parents provide us input here, we find ways to try to address some of the concerns that are here. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to give the answer that everyone wants to hear or that some people want to hear, but the reality is that we're trying to address what the gaps are and be able to try to explain sometimes in some cases what are the decisions and why the decisions are some of the decisions that are being made.
Thanks. I see that Jonathan has a question. Jonathan, do you want to speak up?
Yeah. Hey, how's it going? Sorry I couldn't be there in person today. There was a last minute childcare issue. But Rafael, I just want to say thank you for sharing the guides because I hadn't seen those yet for the teachers and families for the curricula. And I was able to, while you were talking, quickly look through the Wit and Wisdom guide. And overall, I was very impressed with just the specificity of how it was breaking down for educators, how to adapt it, making it really more meaningful for the students that they're teaching. So my question for you is, it's a great first step, but it will require for many educators a lot more support in how to actually implement it. And there's so many layers and elements to that implementation that depending on how experienced the teacher is, for many, this might take a couple of years to figure out, right? For others, they'll pick it up more quickly. And so my question is sort of twofold. One is what plans does the district have already to help support teachers with professional development in terms of how to meaningfully and effectively implement these guides? And second, this does seem like a really good model for other districts across the city. And I'm wondering if you have plans to share it so that other districts can kind of make it their own, because I feel like it's something that the whole city should be able to take advantage of.
Yeah, we thank you for that question, Jonathan. We have shared with one or two districts that have asked when we are doing some sharing across superintendencies, but District 15 has kind of restructured itself for around a support model for next school year. We're using teacher ambassadors at schools. We're using professional learning communities. We're also using these things called learning labs, and I'll talk about them, intervisitations, collaborative planning, coaching cycles. Educators are going to have the opportunity to kind of internalize the curricula, study the student work, and then anticipate misconceptions and kind of determine where their students need additional scaffolds, any interventions, acceleration, or challenge. This is where multiple aspects of what we do as a district are going to be included. So teachers are going to have opportunities in cohorts monthly to meet with one another from different schools within the district to share practices and ideas around how they're maneuvering the needs of their particular students as it relates to wherever a student might be as it relates to a standard, right? So they're going to be able to see and be exposed to different schools and how different schools are using different techniques and strategies to support their particular students. To be clear, and I've always said this, project-based learning is at the core of who we are as a district. I expect to see more and more of that as the years have gone on. In year one, we expected one unit. By year four, which is basically the beginning of this year, we're expecting them to expand even more. I look at the curricula as a tool, right? So from my perspective, it's a tool to be used with some integrity, but I never look at a curricula as a direct fidelity. And the reason why is because we do have different students in front of us. There is a need to adjust for the different needs of our students. And so from us, that's what we're planning to do this year when it comes to the teacher development and support at different levels, because newer teachers are going to need a different type of support. The teacher ambassadors are being trained from our team members on how to support classroom teachers. So the ambassadors would be going not only to teachers who are doing it well, but they would be coaching them side by side, and they would also be supporting them with implementation of the support that individual students might need based on the students' needs. So we're going to be looking at student work to identify misconceptions that students might be having, where some students are struggling in a particular class. And for the first time, it's not just going to be the teacher having to figure it out for themselves. It's going to be a cohort of teachers supporting one another and thinking about what might be the best strategy to address this gap or this need that a particular student is particularly having. So in addition to that, that's separate from the number of sessions that the DOE has already been providing to schools through NYC Reads with the number of days that they get. And in our district, it's Teaching Matters that has been providing that instructional coaching support in the school. So Teaching Matters is still going to continue to do that work. The district ambassadors are going to be supporting schools at the individual schools that individual schools have selected who their ambassadors are going to be. We started the training of the district ambassadors last year. They have gone for several sessions last year. Some have gone through the summer, and we plan to have some more during the beginning of the year. Now, keep that in mind. My team has also been being trained on how to actually coach and support teachers in the classroom to make the adjustments necessary to support students' needs in the given moment. To support teachers on how to support, for example, when I start teaching something and a kid's not getting it, how do I pivot? How do I change? How do I move to help support what a kid may not understand or needs support in understanding? So we've been already working on those particular aspects to support the movement of that work already. That's just some of the ways that we're doing. We're having principals go through that process. We're having assistant principals go through that process. They're all in cohorts. The cohorts were designed by them picking and choosing where their needs were, identifying what data is saying each school kind of needs, picking schools that are from similar communities, but also different communities. So if they're learning from people that have similar populations as them, but also from different populations, because in this school, I might have 3 or 4 kids that are from this population that might benefit from learning from them, and vice versa. And then we've also included middle schools in each of the groups so that there's a continuum from 5th grade on to the 6th and 7th grade, so that there's some forms of continuity, because we do see often, not only in our district but across the city, where there is almost like a lag, where there's a drop from when they leave elementary and go to middle school. Sometimes there's a slight drop, and so we want to be able to try to reduce that drop by making the connections between the elementary and the middle schools. We've included our early childhood grades as well, because we firmly believe that if the early childhood grades are able to get what they need in terms of their social emotional well development, they're going to be able to be also successful in when they're focusing on those foundational skills that are going to help them be ready and necessary for being able to read by 3rd grade.
And Jonathan's wondering whether district ambassadors, the district and Teaching Matters coaches, can they meet to make sure that
They do.
They do.
They do.
Okay.
They do. It's scheduled, and they're prepared to have that throughout the year for each cohort. And I can share with you the calendar for the CEC so that you could see what it looks like. And as CEC members, you get to go to schools. When you're visiting schools, you might want us drop by to see what that looks like in one of our schools. We welcome you to participate in that. You should be able to see that. So we'll get you the calendar of when those cohorts are happening, because we actually have the dates already assigned.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do we have a question?
Yeah, I'd like to ask the district what you're going to do with all the inherent racism that's in this. In 3rd grade, they call people yellow. They call Native American clothing costumes. And EL, you know, there are no Black authors and 2 books in kindergarten that actually have Black characters, but written by white people. All of this curriculum passes the Don't Say Gay test, so it can be sold in Texas, it can be sold in Florida, and that's not our community. That's not in our chancellor's reps. We need a curriculum that represents the kids that are in front of us. We need a diverse amount of different authors, and we need things that are not blatantly racist in the teaching text.
I want to add to that.
And then
I wholeheartedly understand where you're coming from, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, which is why many of our schools, and as I stated before, which is why we are doing it with integrity and not necessarily fidelity. Many of our schools, for example, you're talking about the Wit and Wisdom. I could also tell you about the HMH. HMH does have texts that are not necessarily culturally responsive to some of the communities that we serve, particularly the ones that are using the text in Sunset Park, for example, right? But they have been able to work together as school leaders to identify which texts are culturally responsive for their school communities and are actually using that text in place of the text that exists. Those are some of the things that I have discussed earlier that are 100% fine with me to make the adjustments to meet the need of the actual communities that we're servicing. I would love for you to be able to see what some of that looks like in some of our schools that are using the actual curricula, but are not using the actual texts that go with the particular curricula, because they decided that for cultural responsiveness for the students that they serve, they're using different texts and supplementing that text with this text. What's staying to the core is the aspects of the science of reading around how to actually teach some of the subjects and some of the topics that are being discussed. So that's kind of what we're actually doing. So I'm glad you're bringing that up. I would love to share some of the schools that are doing that. I would be happy to go with you to see what that looks like and how the schools are doing that. The whole goal of the learning labs and the collaborative district ambassadors and stuff like that is to be able to expose other schools that haven't done that to start seeing how they can actually go about doing that. For example, in my Sunset Park community, because many of them are using the HMH, they have already come together as school leaders to decide these are the texts we want to use because they're culturally responsive for the students that we service in our community, so that the kids can see themselves in the text that they're actually reading. And I 100% support that, 100% agree with that, and have no objections to that at all.
So I just want to jump in and say I agree, and my kids are in going into 7th and going into 4th, and so I've seen the shift with my 7th grader now compared to my 4th grader in what they're doing in the classroom. I don't like Wit and Wisdom, and I think part of what I'd like to do when we talk about the resolution in a few minutes after the ODP presentation, which I think we're going to need to bracket some of this conversation for that, I have some real concerns about the selection process for the curricula that are chosen for the city. And I think, knowing that these curricula were chosen under Chancellor Banks, who certainly does not have my trust, under a mayor who left in disgrace. I think there's some real problems with that now being the thing that we've inherited and that we're having to work within. So I think there are questions that I would like to ask at the PEP level, the contract level, and the citywide level for how we avoid getting to this point in the future where now we have these curricula in place. We don't want to pull the rug from teachers who have been learning to use it over the last couple of years. I think we need a structure in place for teachers to build on. But how do we make sure that we're actually using a system that works for the city that we're in and for the students that we're teaching now? So I do want to have that conversation. I'd like to hold it until we can read through the resolution, if that's okay. Okay. Are there other questions from council members about Superintendent Alvarez's presentation, or shall we move on to Office of District Planning? Ken, anything from you?
No questions.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much, Superintendent. We're going to hear from the Office of District Planning about schools, school usage. I'm going to give you my seat. I'll just hover over here off to the side. No, take these. Yes. Happy to be off camera for a minute. And thanks for joining us today. The ODP data is always really important and sometimes hard for us to understand. So we appreciate you being the person.
Yeah, thank you everyone for having us. Chris, I'll go ahead and get us started. Good evening. I'm Tori LaRoche. I'm from the Office of District Planning alongside my colleague Chris Gurley. We are the team that supports Brooklyn North as well as the borough of Staten Island. If you don't mind going to the agenda slide, just to give you a little bit of a roadmap, we're going to share a bit about our office. I think some of you are familiar with the work that we do and how we partner with you all, but just as a refresh about the types of work that our office supports, in particular, 2 chancellor's regulations that guide our work. Then we'll take a deeper dive into a few data points from the Public District Data Summary. This is a document that we provide annually. It has been refreshed with enrollment data that includes this most recent 25-26 school year. And then we're happy to take any questions or comments from you all. Okay, so if you go to page 4, district planning levers. So we work really closely with individual school communities, with councils, certainly with superintendents and our partner offices to assess on an annual basis district needs and priorities. And we are essentially your strategic planners when it comes to the Department of Education. We have a few different tools in our toolbox for how we can affect change in a district or in a school. These are changes to school utilization. So we can think about our existing zones, so rezoning an area, unzoning, so creating schools with choice admissions priorities. We can merge schools together. We open new schools and new programming. Here, programming means 3K pre-K programming, adult education, District 79 programming. We can reconfigure the grades that a school serves. So for example, if we have a 6 to 12 school, we can truncate them to being only a 6 to 8 school. We can also expand a school's grades, so the opposite direction. We recite schools, so either moving an entire school from one building to another, or in District 15, we've actually done several split sightings where we recite just a couple grades from one school into another building, like PS 321, like Sunset Park Avenues. We do support the charter school office, so where there are requests from charter schools for space in public buildings, we work to locate them in school buildings where there is space. And we also support enrollment planning kind of all throughout the year. If you go to the next slide, just to outline our annual work here, we kind of throughout the spring are working internally to assess different needs and opportunities in a district. We're pulling our data summaries together. Around this time of year, the summer, we meet with councils to provide a district data consultation. And we're happy to also continue to meet with you all if you have questions as we get into the new school year. And then if there are any levers that we are pursuing, we really try to have authentic community engagement, meeting with school communities and families. Those usually take place in the fall and the winter. And those are guided, as I mentioned, by 2 chancellor's regulations. So very briefly on page 7, public review process for changes to school utilization. Those are governed by Chancellor's Regulation A190. This guides the public review process. So some of those levers that I mentioned earlier, like grade reconfigurations, moving new schools or co-locating schools together and merging schools. Those require very specific steps as outlined in the Chancellor's Regulation. Chris and I help facilitate this process. So we would publish an educational impact statement, that is the proposal document. And if a charter is involved, we publish a building utilization plan that outlines the space. We convene a joint public hearing alongside the CEC. This is a very formal engagement where the superintendent outlines the proposal and then the public is invited to make comment in 2-minute increments. We don't respond in the moment at joint public hearings. We respond in writing in a document called the Analysis of Public Comment, and that is released after the hearing. And ultimately, we are arranging for these proposals to go for a vote by the Panel for Educational Policy, or the PEP. That is the citywide body that governs these proposals. And then finally, to sum up kind of the work that we do together, as the PEP is overseeing changes to school utilization, you all know under your purview are school rezonings and unzonings. Rezoning is governed by Chancellor's Regulation A185. Typically in a rezoning, Chris and I would work closely with the superintendent, usually with a subset of the CEC, to think through where there are opportunities to rezone or unzone an area. Usually that is triggered by new capacity. So if we have an annex or a new building opening that would allow us to rethink what geographic zone is entitled to attend a given school, in this case, an elementary school, we could consider a rezoning. And then we would develop the specific maps. So which side of the street is zoned to which school, and we would present that to the CEC for a vote. These can accomplish a lot of things. Like I mentioned, sometimes it's new capacity. We're opening a brand new school building, perhaps. Sometimes we think about increasing access to high quality schools or integration. It can also be a tool for alleviating overcrowding. That's an overview of the work that we can do together, but we'll now shift gears to take a look at the data, which should be at least familiar to you all in this format, but like I mentioned, refreshed with the most recent data. So on page 11, thank you. This is our picture of enrollment for the district. You'll see in this chart, we have 6 years worth of data broken out by grade level and then summed together at the bottom. We include the percentage change in the last 1 year, as well as over the last 5 years. Something that always stands out, you'll see there's a 5-year, 3,000, almost 4,000% increase in 3K. That's because 3K was added as an initiative in the district during that time period. And over the last 5 years, I think you'll notice if you look at the bottom right corner, overall enrollment, including high school enrollment, has declined by 13% in District 15 in the last 5 years. But if you want to think more specifically about the elementary school grades and middle school grades, elementary school enrollment in grades K to 5 has declined by 17% in the last 5 years, and middle school enrollment has declined by 18% in the last 5 years. So those are big declines, but that is on par with the enrollment decline that we have seen citywide. So in most areas of the city, we see similar trends, though we know each kind of neighborhood tells its own story. But in the last 1 year, I think you'll see that elementary school, middle school, high school enrollment have essentially remained steady. You're looking at 3 to 4% change in those specific grade bands. So we think that's indicating enrollment has steadied. I know we're seeing certain places where, we're seeing more zone demand than we have in recent years. Perhaps families, maybe there was a COVID baby boom. Maybe we're seeing the families move back into certain parts of the city. So that's something that we're watching really closely, especially as we think through implementing reduced class sizes. Okay, I think this is my last one for a minute. If we go to the next slide, this is our in and out model. This is a helpful visual that gives you the picture of residents to enrollment in the district. On one side of the chart in the middle, we have elementary school data. On the far right, we have middle school data. I'm going to walk you through the column that is right under MS for middle school, 25-26. The top row of this table are residents of District 15. So there were 8,715 middle school aged residents in the district last year. If we use that as our starting point, we have a balance sheet here. So we are going to subtract out residents who enrolled in other district school public schools. Maybe they went to a District 13 middle school, for example. There were about 1,600 middle school age residents who did that. 88 students were enrolled in District 75 or District 79 programming, 764 enrolled in charters, and about 2,400 District 15 middle school residents enrolled in non-public schools. Those are our private or parochial religious schools. So the total number of residents that enrolled in these other settings, non-District 15 schools, it's about 4,900. About 1,400 students who live in other districts enrolled in District 15 middle schools. So we add that number in, and that change gives you the total District 15 middle school enrollment. So that 5,200 should be the same number that we saw on the earlier page for 25-26 middle school enrollment. We include comparison data here so you can see what that looked like 5 years ago in the 2020 school year, which notably was a COVID school year. But at the time there were, you would see here, just more residents overall at both the elementary school and middle school levels. So that top row, 2020 had a greater number of residents in 2020 than in 25-26. But in large part, some of the choices that families are making of the families that reside in District 15 have been similar. So we haven't seen a broad shift in the last 5 years. All of a sudden, many more families are choosing a different setting than they would have before. But we are talking about kind of a smaller pie of residents overall. So we think that driver of the decline in enrollment largely driven by changes in the residential population. Okay, Chris.
The next slide goes over the 6th grade articulation in District 15. So if a student attended a District 15 elementary school, where did they go to middle school? You see that there are 2 columns. There's the column with all the headers, and then the middle column, 2020, 2021, 2021, 2022. That shows us 5 years ago, students who were in 5th grade in the 2020, 2021 school year, where did they go to middle school in the following 2021, 2022 school year? Sorry, we know it's a mouthful. So we see we're starting with 1,649 5th graders. I'm sorry, at the bottom is the total, 2,633 5th graders. 1,649 of those 5th graders, or 63%, went to their District 15 middle school. Then 496, or 19%, went to a middle school in a different district, be that District 20, District 13, etc. Only 1 went to a District 75 school, 0 went to District 79, 140, or 5%, went from a District 15 middle school to a charter school. 132 or 5% went from a District 15 elementary school to a private or parochial school. And then 172 or 7% left New York City altogether. And then we see, flash forward 5 years, those rates were nearly identical. So 64% of District 15 5th graders at the end of the 24-25 school year went to a District 15 middle school in the 25-26 school year, and on down the list. So the total number of fifth graders has declined, as we saw on the previous page, but the rates at which they're choosing a District 15 middle school versus a charter school versus a school, a public school in a different district is pretty steady. So we know in District 15, it might be shocking if any schools aren't very full. We know there's a lot of very full schools in the district. But we do monitor when schools get below a certain threshold, when they're in the bottom 25% of enrollment. And that number can shift from year to year. In the most recent year, that number was 250. So if schools fell below 250 students, we want to investigate and interrogate that and see if that is something that makes sense, or if that's a school who's a candidate for some sort of intervention. And the reason for that is, as we know, schools are funded by the number of students that they have. And so when schools get below a certain enrollment, it can sometimes be challenging for them to afford to offer the type of programming that their community is looking for. And so in District 15 last year, there were only 6 schools that fell below this 250 threshold. Of those 6, 2 were high schools, so not relevant for this conversation. And then there were 4 elementary schools, 118, 124, 295, and 418. And then 418, the children's school, we know is intentionally small due to the special programming that it provides. So really just these other schools, 118, 124, 295, those are schools where we are just monitoring. We want to be in conversation with you all. We want to be in conversation with the superintendent of, are these schools that are able to offer the programming that the community is looking for, or are these schools where some type of intervention may need to be considered? And then we also want to stay informed and aware of the special populations of students in District 15. So students with disabilities, English language learners, students who might be considered economically disadvantaged, and students who are in temporary housing. And so here we see a breakdown of students who are identified in these categories at the elementary school level, the middle school level, and the high school level, and how the District 15 populations compare to both the borough and the overall city populations. No, at both the elementary school level and middle school level, District 15's percentage of students who are English language learners and students who live in temporary housing nearly reflect the percentages at both the borough level and the city level. At the elementary school level, District 15's percentage of students with disability reflects the borough and city percentages, but at the middle school level, there's a higher percentage of students with disabilities than either the borough or city level. At both the elementary school and the middle school level, the percentage of District 15 students considered economically disadvantaged is below both the borough and city levels. And then not pictured here, District 15 has a deficit of 91 seats for students who qualify for District 75 student services. That should say District 75 services at the elementary school level. So as I'm sure everyone here knows, there are some students who are best served in a District 75 setting, and District 75 programs are typically co-located alongside a D1 through 32 program. And in District 15 last year, we had a deficit at the elementary school level, meaning that there are elementary school aged students who qualify for District 75 services who have to travel outside of the district to receive their services. And that travel can obviously be a hardship for families if they're having to be on a bus 45 minutes each way to get the services that they are entitled to. And so we are always looking for opportunities to add District 75 programs in the communities where they are needed. Again, going back to the fact that most District 15 elementary schools have really robust enrollment, which is great. But that does mean that we are not always able to open District 75 programs where and when we want to, but we are always on the lookout, and we welcome any sort of input or feedback or creative ideas on how we could add those programs. And then just the last page, we know class size law compliance is top of mind for everyone in the city, and especially in District 15. It's a topic of focus. And so this shows for the recently concluded 2025-2026 school year, how all the districts in the city were stacked up in their current class size law compliance. And District 15 is kind of 2/3 of the way down from the page. And we see that they had a 64% compliance rate, which was right in line with the overall citywide compliance rate of 64%. So of course, we are continuing to explore ways to make sure we're as reaching the level of compliance that we need to. And that's something that we're in constant conversation with the superintendent about, and we will be in conversation with the CEC about as well moving forward. So that was a ton of data, a ton of words. Thank you so much for listening. And with your permission, we'll take some questions and comments.
Can you mind with like?
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll start in the room, public comment.
What analysis done as to why the enrollment is happening beyond just that the city is losing population, because anecdotally at least, I'm hearing a lot of people are very upset about increasing ed tech in schools, the curriculum mandates, AI coming up, and that's the reason why people don't want to nursing public schools. So I'm wondering besides
Yeah, I can start. Let me flip back to page 12. So as we see, we're not interviewing hundreds or thousands of families, obviously, although that would be very interesting to be able to survey families of why they are making these different choices. As we see that the rates at which families are choosing either a District 15 school or a different district school or a private school, they've stayed pretty steady over the past 5 years. And so maybe the reasons have changed. Maybe 5 years ago they were choosing a private school for a different reason, and now they're choosing a private school because they feel that the private school is not doing AI, or the reasons you just named. But it seems that the rate at which families are making those choices has remained steady.
Probably part of the purview of what you're doing, that an exit interview for families would be to find out, because there could be fairly simple changes that be made that would result in, especially like this isn't going to capture, for example, the widespread feeling about AI that's happening now. Parents of the younger children, look at this group of parents were organizing against AI, and even showing up to the camera. They have 2-year-olds, they have 3-year-olds. They're not, their data isn't going to be really reflected in this yet.
Right.
And I feel like it would be irresponsible of the school system not to look into that. How it not just for pedagogical reasons, but also for the sustaining school system and especially it's necessarily the best option if their schools aren't even what they want.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions or comments, public?
I do, and if there's other questions or comments from members of the public, which I know it's hard to hear over the AC, folks can still chime in, but the shortfall of seats for District 75 students in the district, what are the strategies around that? I mean, we know how hard it is for families when they have to leave the district, when if they have multiple children, they're split at schools that are really far apart, the busing is a mess. So what can we do to improve the ratio of students from in seats to students out?
So we work with special education as well as the Office of Student Enrollment. They're assessing this throughout the year, and we get an annual update on where we are seeing the need for District 75 seats and updated information on where families have the longest travel times and where the most families have travel times that may be creating a hardship. So we're kind of looking at the borough of Brookline, trying to understand this need and where we have pockets where it would be particularly helpful to look into, are there schools that have space in the building where we could open a new District 75 program that would then be sort of a hub for families that are in that area who then would no longer have to travel as far. For this the last couple of years at the elementary school level, we opened District 75 at a building on Atlantic Avenue. That I think really helped meet some of the elementary school needs we saw at the time. We opened, multiple middle school programs for this upcoming school year that will help at the middle school level. So I think as we project forward, we'll be interested in kind of working with you all and working with Superintendent Alvarez to see where we have schools that have space, asking the question, is that an area where it would help with this need? I think in the data workbook that we shared with you all, it has utilization information for every building in the district. That's usually a good starting point for us. Thank you.
Any other questions from the public, online or in person here?
This is not directly connected to the ODP presentation, but I just wanted to mention that we have two PEP members who are joining us online tonight, Raji Hannah-Jones and Maddie Fox. And Raji Hannah-Jones just mentioned that the contract committee meeting is tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. You can watch online. If you want to ask any questions, you have to be there in person at the Tweed building on Chambers Street. Contracts is where everything happens. So if folks are interested in making change and in shifting things like the screeners that we use, the curriculum that we use, the busing contracts, the contracts committee is a really important place to start. Yeah, Raji, I'll pass it over to you just a second. Are there any other questions about the ODP presentation?
We have one question. This is somewhat related just to.
And I have one after that too.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan.
To the decrease in enrollment in District 15. So just from the numbers, at least looking at 2025, 2026, it doesn't quite, and this is page 11. It doesn't quite appear that those numbers are stabilized. It actually appears that picking up relative to the prior year to year. So I'm wondering, I guess this is just an extension of the same question. Has this been elevated as a particular area of concern for our district? Separate and aside from the rest of the city?
So I think there's sort of the health of the district that we are always thinking about, kind of how can we ensure that our schools are robustly enrolled? I think District 15 is really interesting because so many schools where we have seen historic overcrowding since the pandemic are now no longer overcrowded. So it's kind of when you say, has it been elevated and how are we thinking about, the enrollment challenge in District 15? I think right now, at this moment where we're thinking about reduced class sizes, there are a lot of areas that maybe 6 years ago, the schools would have been overcrowded and now they currently are not. So that has solved kind of the historic overcrowding piece. And where I think we're most keenly interested are in those 4 elementary schools, or really 3 elementary schools that have fallen below that 250 total enrollment. Thinking at the individual school level, those may not be the schools that have seen the biggest enrollment decline. For example, 118 doesn't have the space to be a 5-section per grade school. But we want to really keep an eye on places where the decline in enrollment is even outpacing the district-wide kind of rate. And that's where we're looking at individual school enrollment. So I would say that this, like I said, it is on par with a lot of the districts where Chris and I oversee in North Brooklyn. And I think a similar trend that we're seeing citywide.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I think you kind of answered some of my question, but you know, later in your presentation, you more explicitly connected to other districts in the city and the state, and I was just, you know, curious to talk a little bit more about the trends that you're seeing in 15 in terms of that decline compared to other parts of the city, and then also, I just wanted to note there was another question in the chat from an 839 community member. So I wanted to just flag that for afterwards.
We can also, I think, share as a follow-up, our Associate Director of Analytics wasn't able to join tonight, but we can work on maybe just a little visual so you can see kind of a comparison for the city. We used to include that in this data summary. For brevity, we streamlined the data, but now I think we are getting questions like, okay, how does this look across the citywide enrollment landscape? So we can work it in follow.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. And then a community member at 839 is asking about like, what are the considerations for district boundaries being shifted? And they mentioned that their school is walking distance to lots of families that are in Western Flatbush, but out of district for those families. And that would, you know, there's also questions of integration that could be addressed through some shifts in zoning. So it sounds like they're wondering, what does that process look like? What leads you to look at something?
Yeah. Our office works with CECs and superintendents when it comes to zone lines. So elementary school, middle school, primarily high school in some cases, but district lines are set by the state of New York. And so our office has no control over state lines. Yeah.
I didn't know that at all.
So yeah,
That's
we
interesting.
are not able to impact district lines.
Huh, okay. Good to know, thank you. Great. Just checking to see if I missed any other questions about this presentation. I would love to stay in good touch about the schools that are on the smaller side too, just to make sure that if there's anything we can be doing on the CEC side to support. Yeah, those are really important schools, and not every school is an important school, but I don't know. Yeah. They're all like picking you to me, so. Yeah, and I'm looking to you because Kat's a parent at 124, and we have our meeting tomorrow. Oh, great, okay, all right.
There was just a piece of information on that question from 839, our community member, and he just wanted to add that they have a specific and explicit integration goal. The white student population has increased over the last 5 years, while the Black population has decreased. So they want their demographics to match the district. So appreciate help with data that can support that goal.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I'm sorry, just one follow-up on this as I'm, so the question would be specifically around district lines, because perhaps if there were a way for families to be zoned to 839,
Right.
it would be pushing over into either kind of 17 or 22.
Yeah, that's right. And that might be a desirable school for those families. If they were in district because it's right there. It's
right. Okay. But I think because we're, you know, the middle school landscape admissions has changed so much in recent years.
Yeah.
And also with the diversity plan for District 15, I think we can take a closer look, but you know, there are certain elementary schools, for example, that might be zoned for two areas. Like there are schools for 13 and 15, where parts of 15 are zoned to 13, and then they come back for middle school. So we can take a closer look, but I think that is a really tricky question, and we definitely don't have a quick solution that we could pull there, but we'll take a closer look at 839.
Thank you, and thanks for the question. Kat, Jinsa, any questions? Okay. Yeah, thank you both so much.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time. Thank you.
Thanks much.
All right. Well, thank you. I signed it and never sent it around to anybody else. All right, just getting my bearings and my tabs here again. Okay, so we are now ready to turn to the resolution that was brought forward by the working group on instruction and programming. By Chris, thanks for that's a full minutes. So as we've already seen in the conversation this evening, this is the question about required curricula is something that has emerged as a really key concern in the community over time, but I would say especially in recent months. I want to say thank you to everybody on the committee on the working group, excuse me, who has put time and energy and thoughtfulness into this resolution. This is exactly what we are hoping the working groups will be able to do, is to uplift and bring forward concerns and questions that are on the minds of the community, bring them to the council for consideration and refinement, and then we can use what levers we have available to us to consider how we want to move forward. Much like the AI resolution that our council passed last spring, which I feel really happy that we were able to do in the way and in the timeline that we did. We will review and discuss the resolution today as it's been presented to us, and then council members will have a chance to recommend revisions before we bring it forward for a vote, hopefully in September. Could I ask for a volunteer to read the resolution? We don't always do this anymore, but because it's something that's come from the community, I want to make sure that folks hear it in the language in which it's written. I don't know, Ken or Kat, if either of you feel like reading. Yeah, thanks, Ken, appreciate it. I have it right here.
You have it? Great. Okay. Well, resolution opposing mandatory curricula.
And you gotta speak up.
Okay,
Your voice is soft.
can you hear me? I would love to hear that more often. I just stopped. Okay, so this draft presented by the Instruction and Programming Working Group, August 2026. Whereas District 15 families and educators strive to foster an education in the service of the whole child and their unique intellectual dispositions and interests. Whereas children have different needs and there is no one way that all children learn best. Whereas District 15 teachers have historically tailored curriculum aligned to New York State standards to meet the needs and interests of the children in their classrooms, have not taught the same subject matter the same way year after year, but adjusted their approaches to respond to their specific classrooms of learners. Whereas the most effective curricula, in particular for disadvantaged students, are those that are responsive to each student's unique strengths and needs. Whereas literacy research calls for, quote, learning pathways that are personalized, differentiated, culturally and linguistically relevant, and context-based, end quote. Whereas schools that focus on project-based learning and not on improving test-based metrics have greater outcomes that surpass those for similar students in New York State, including in 4-year high school graduation rate, 18-month college enrollment, and college persistence. Whereas New York City public schools implemented mandates for the use of standardized commercial curricula throughout the city for 3K and pre-K ELA in September 2023, for K through 5 ELA in September 2024, and for Algebra 1 in September 2024. Whereas District 15 leadership has mandated additional commercial curricula, particularly in its middle schools, whereas none of these mandated commercial curricula provided personalized, differentiated, culturally and linguistically relevant and context-based instruction. Whereas these mandated curricula are scripted and difficult to adapt and differentiate for students with diverse learning strengths and needs, including students with individualized education plans, multi-language learners, and students who would benefit from accelerated learning opportunities. Whereas these mandated curricula impose specific and narrow topics of study, often replacing the previously developed social studies, science, and project-based curricula due to time constraints. Whereas providing all students with the same instruction at the same pace precludes providing individual children with what they need to be able to access the material and receive an appropriate public education as required under law. Whereas general education and special education teacher retention has decreased in New York City since 2019 across all levels of experience, with the lowest retention rate among new teachers. Whereas mandating curricula, rather than providing teachers the opportunity to use particular curricula, restricts teacher autonomy and their ability to use the full breadth of their expertise to address student needs, leading to teacher disengagement and dissatisfaction and further hindering teacher retention in the public school system. Whereas all of the curricula currently mandated by New York City public schools are owned and or funded by private equity firms or groups, many of which are working toward the privatization of public schools. Whereas the commercially developed curricula being mandated or standardized so that they can be used across national markets and therefore do not take into account the unique and unparalleled resources offered by New York City or local neighborhoods surrounding our schools as sites of learning, and cannot deliver the heightened student engagement and academic outcomes that accrue when students have access to place-based learning centered on their own local environment and community. Whereas, because these mandated commercial curricula are created for school districts throughout the country, they are not consistent with District 15 community values. Whereas these mandated commercial curricula focus instruction largely on raising test scores, leading to reduced play-based and experiential learning opportunities, and to reduced opportunity for inquiry and student-driven learning. Whereas, despite their emphasis on raising standardized testing metrics, these mandated curricula have not been shown to improve student performance on New York State standardized tests. Whereas building educators' professional knowledge is a prerequisite for making informed decisions about instructional materials and approaches that are appropriate for the students in their classrooms. Therefore, be it resolved that CEC 15 calls on the New York City Public Schools to remove all curriculum mandates and return to a student and community-first approach, reinstating schools' autonomy to create or select curricula that match the unique contexts, strengths, and areas of need in our individual schools and classrooms, as informed by our teachers, principals, and communities. And be it also resolved that CEC 15 calls on District 15 to remove any curriculum mandates exceeding current citywide requirements. And be it also resolved that CEC 15 calls on District 15 to prioritize pedagogical skills over specific curricular products, emphasizing sustained, high-quality professional development and mentorship. There are a list of references.
The parts left out. The like naming the private equity firms, I think knowing those names would influence people. And
Okay.
like agreeing with Florida Stop Woke Act, et cetera.
Okay.
I just PDF'd the document as it was sent to me.
And I should mention, I didn't read all of the
It's here.
citations.
Yeah, it's in the site. Those aren't citations. They're parenthetical, but they're not citations.
Okay. Okay, correct. Would it be better for me to go back and read those specific provisions,
Just those,
those specific clauses? Okay. So I'll repeat I'll repeat, and my apologies for missing that. I'll repeat those clauses with those parentheticals.
It's the fourth one from the top on page 2 is the first one.
Right. Okay. Great. Okay. Thank you. Whereas all of the curricula currently mandated by New York City public schools are owned and or funded by private equity firms or groups, many of which are working toward the privatization of public schools. For example, teaching strategies, the creative curriculum is owned by Kohlberg Kravis Roberts and Company, LP. L Education is funded by the Bezos Family Foundation. Is it Hutton Mifflin? I should know how to pronounce this. I've seen it since I was like 5. Hutton Mifflin, Harcourt's Interreading is owned by Veritas Capital. Great Minds, Wit, and Wisdom was formerly known as Common Core, Inc.
And then the next one is 200.
There we go, yes. Okay, whereas because these mandated commercial curricula are created for school districts throughout the country, they are not consistent with District 15 community values. For example, Great Minds, Wit, and Wisdom is consistent with Florida's Stop Woke Act, which prohibits classroom instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity. Hutton Mifflin Harcourt's Interreading has been found to be culturally destructive and to use ahistorical narratives and language that demeans and dehumanizes Black and Indigenous characters of color while encouraging empathy and connection with white characters. I think those are the.
Yeah, I just
Thank
got
you.
those
Okay,
details.
that is good context.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for reading it. I know I've had to do that a number of times, and it's a slog to read through out loud. I'm gonna pause and let that digest. I realized I forgot to pass the mic over to Fraji Hannah-Jones and Maddie Fox just to introduce yourselves briefly while we're all sort of assimilating the language from the resolution. If you both are still online and want to say hello and mention the contracts meeting tomorrow, you're very welcome to do so.
Hi, Faraji Hannah Jones, pronouns he, him. I am the PEP Brooklyn CEC appointee. Just want to say hello to everyone from CEC 15. And thank you for allowing me to speak. I've been a parent for a parent leader for a long time, served in every capacity. Looking forward to seeing more of your resolution. I'm sure you're going to send it to me, so I will read the other pages. And thank you so much for drafting this resolution. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Fraji. Appreciate it.
Hey everybody, I'm Maddie Fox. I am very glad to be here. I'm a mayoral appointee, a new mayoral appointee on the panel for educational policy, and I'm also a District 15 parent. I have 2 children and one who is just entering high school, so that's a new, I guess don't have both my kids in District 15 schools for the first time. But so I'm here tonight as a District 15 community member, and as I guess multiple hats. I'm here listening and learning to this conversation as a PEP member as well. So I'm very glad to be here. Always happy to be in touch. Yeah, you'll be seeing me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maddie and Faraji, both of you, for being here. I know you've got a lot of ground to cover as PEP members, and we appreciate you being here and taking a few minutes with us. All right, let's start turning to the discussion. And if we need to pause for a break at any point in this, I know it's been a long meeting already so far, so we'll take it as we need to. I want to editorialize a little bit about like what I see as some of the goals and possibilities of this resolution, and then I'll open it to broader discussion. The goals that I see and that I very much align with are teacher agency, cultural responsiveness, tailoring teaching to student need, and not having the teaching be test focused. There are a number of other materials that have been shared in recent days, especially as the city's test scores have been released for the past year, and there's been a lot of concern about them. Racial Justice for Public Schools, or Racially Just Public Schools, RJPS, shared what I find to be a really strong statement, asking the mayor to invest in culturally responsive education and community schools. And the UFT, the teachers union, has expressed strong concerns about the reading curriculum. So I just want to add those into the mix for the conversation, because I think that they're from 2 important constituent groups that that speak to some of the citywide concerns in addition to what we might be thinking about at the district level. And then the last thing I want to mention, just by way of sort of framing as we think about the conversation, is to think about the points of intervention that we as a CEC may be poised to make. I know, I think, Ken, it was you who made a statement when we were talking about the social media resolution, that it didn't sit right for you to make something that felt like a statement that was not actionable, that our preference as a council, and we ended up aligning in that in how we reframed that resolution, our preference as a council was to think about things that could be picked up and acted upon. And so I've been thinking about what some of these points of intervention are. I think at a district level, things like flexibility, the ease of tailoring, professional development that's made available and is part of the fabric of teacher training. And I think at a citywide level, there are real questions and demands, I think, that we can make around financial accountability and transparency, and clarity of selection process. So I want to put all that on the table, and now I'll open it up for public comment first, either folks who are here on Zoom or on the translation lines, or joining us in person.
Should I go?
Go ahead, sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I have what I'm gonna say, but then also, I had corresponded with Jonathan. I have several statements from
okay.
teachers and a student.
Why don't you read yours first, and then we'll see if there's anybody else who's joining us now who wants to speak, and then we'll pass it back to you for statements.
Okay. All right. 1 second. So my name is Kamala Carmen. My kids attended school in T15, but as you might surmise from my gray hair, they have since aged out. However, I remain deeply interested in what's going on in our district schools and New York City public schools in general, because one, I think my kids were so lucky to get the kind of education that they did, and I want those coming after them to have the same opportunities. And two, I believe that if we're to have any chance of having a functioning democracy in society, then our children must be educated to be critical thinkers, curious, and literate. Sadly, I think the mandated imposition of commercial curriculum products is a serious threat to both of those objectives. I could talk to you about the joy, confidence, and yes, academic preparation my children got from their teacher-created curriculum, rooted as it was in hands-on exploration of the world around them, and in particular this magnificent city, the resource of all resources. But since time is short, what I'm going to do instead is to read you a series of statements that were sent to me by D15 teachers and a student earlier today when I mentioned on a WhatsApp thread that I would be coming to this meeting. I want to have on the record that these statements are anonymous because the statement makers fear reprisals from the district if they stray from the party line. That alone should give us pause about the wisdom of these mandates.
Thank you.
And I wish others would have heard that.
I know I might go peek into the hallway and see if they're ready to rejoin. But in the meantime, do you mind taking over as parliamentary?
Sure. Okay. We will continue with any public questions. We'll look into the chat, see if there are any questions from the public. Please feel free to ask them in the chat. Okay. Do we have any additional questions or comments from the public in person? Yes.
I have the statements.
You have the statements?
Potentially may, I don't know. Okay, so this is teacher statement number 1.
Okay.
I am a seasoned teacher at a T15 elementary school. I strongly believe that NYC Reads curricula are bad for kids, especially struggling readers. Not only are they causing our students' reading and writing skills and ability levels to decrease, but worse, they're creating a generation of young kids who hate reading and writing. This past year, I stopped indicating on my schedule when we were doing lessons from Whitney Wisdom as opposed to other writing or social studies lessons because my students hated them so much that they would whine and complain when that period came up in schedule. My second year teaching the curriculum, my students started a petition against it and got, I think, every student in the grade to sign. The lessons are too long, full of top-down teacher talk, overly wordy and repetitive. Even my top students struggle to focus and pay attention to them. I also stopped using the workbooks and started spending a ton of my own time creating resources that my students could actually access, understand, and potentially enjoy. The language is so incredibly developmentally inappropriate that my first year teaching at some of my ICT kids literally cried with frustration when trying to grapple with the material. There is something to be said for joy, too. Kids learn best when they're engaged and happy. I used to be able to spark the joy of reading in even the most reluctant of readers. Doing that with this curriculum that literally makes the students groan and complain and even cry, impossible. Okay. Teachers, I don't know if you want to go first or I can keep reading these statements. Teacher statement number 2. Renee Dinnerstein, whose work some of you may know, responded to what I'm about to read with this. Quote, as a former kindergarten teacher in District 15 and as the author of a book on choice time, this makes me feel like crying and raging. And she was responding to this statement. I'm a kindergarten teacher in New York City Public School, currently teaching the Whitney Wisdom curriculum. I would like to speak about how this curriculum is not developmentally appropriate for my students and also does not adequately address the literacy crisis. In my school, we teach wit and wisdom, which is a 90-minute lesson for kindergarten through 8th grade, even though research shows that 90-minute lessons are inappropriate for kindergartners. Before the implementation of New York City Reads, the general guidelines for early childhood education at my school were that children should only be sitting on the rug as long as their age. That means a quick mini lesson to get the kids and students engaged. That's all out the window now. Students are expected to stay focused on teacher lectures that are wordy and inaccessible. While yes, students are able to be quote unquote compliant under these new guidelines, it is absolutely heartbreaking to see how this is sucking the joy out of kindergarten. What used to be a place full of exploration, inquiry, and learning through play has turned into a source of stress and anxiety. Teaching children starting at age 4 or 5 at school is hard, stressful, and boring. Additionally, although wit and wisdom is supposedly supported by the science of reading, it only supports vocabulary comprehension and knowledge building, not phonics or phonemic awareness. This means teachers are supplementing 90 minutes of wit and wisdom lessons with 30 minutes of phonics instruction, 10 minutes of phonemic awareness instruction, and 25 minutes of MTSS devoted to phonics. With all this, in addition to math and social studies, there is barely any time left for play anymore. Without time for play, we are seeing students struggling. What we are doing to these children in the name of quote unquote science is criminal. Teachers' expertise based on our years of experience and knowledge of child development is being dismissed in favor of strict adherence to scripted curriculum, and teachers being labeled as lazy or non-compliant for screaming this from the rooftops. As a teacher, I want all of my students to learn to read and write, but this is not the way. Bring back play, inquiry, and developmentally appropriate literacy instruction. There are 2 more teachers. Teacher statement number 3. I'm a 6th through 8th grade ELA/ENL teacher using a New York City Reads curriculum. Before we fully adopted New York City Reads units, we had a novel and short story-based curriculum that was designed by teachers who know what their students are interested in. Our unit tests and writing tests were also designed by us to test the skills we taught in each unit. We were able to read a few full novels throughout the school year. Now we have mandated New York City Reads units and a strict day-by-day pacing guide. In our first year with this curriculum, we only read excerpts and no full books. The feeling I get is that we are racing to pack in skills in a way that is completely incoherent. Units are a mix of fiction and nonfiction, and texts are often excerpted in a way that they lose their original meaning. For example, in an excerpt from the novel The Breadwinner, children are asked to make inferences about character, motive, conflict, cultural background, and setting after only reading a few pages in a way that would fall apart in the context of the entire book. We also have mandated online unit tests that take students several days to complete, plus selection tests on each excerpt. We have lost multiple weeks, in my case, about 3 full weeks of instructional time to these online unit tests that most of our students fail. I feel districts and schools should consider that what we are losing with these prepackaged curricula. ELA teachers know that students need to practice sustained, focused attention and stamina to read entire books and to truly connect to characters. And we know this is when our students are most engaged. Okay, and the last teacher one.
And if I could, before the last one, just per our bylaws, if you could restrict the length to 1 minute, each comment is limited at 1 minute, please.
Okay, I mean, these are other people's words that I'm just reading, so I didn't edit them. I can't like do that on the fly.
What I might request, if this is possible, if you could submit those public or those anonymous statements for us to then share.
Be a minute, it's shorter.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Previous statements were from teachers who have been made to teach written wisdom. I wanted to include one thing about HMH since it's in a few district schools too. It's a little different from the previous statements in that while it was submitted to me by New York City teachers, an excerpt from an article he wrote for publication. Before this expert, the writer was describing Lois Lowry's novel, The Giver. It is a kid-friendly send-up of fascism, and the principal refused to allow teachers to teach Lowry's book. Apparently, this book has been banned in the past because of its political commentary, its violence, its occasional sexual references, and depiction of euthanasia. The principal took issue with none of these things. Instead, she objected to the fact that it is a book. The school had adopted a reading curriculum, HMHs, into reading that excluded books in favor of test-aligned excerpts. So the principal argued that teachers could not teach any books at all. In past, students had loved The Giver, and the teachers wanted to give the kids the experience of reading a novel like Lowry's. And the last thing is a student statement, comes from a rising 8th grader who attends school in Sunset Park. As a New York City middle school student in District 15, I know firsthand that teachers being able to accommodate for what helps your brain learn is very important to actually take in any information. I've seen a lot of kids at my school who clearly have so much potential not be able to process the information being given to them because these curriculums are being created by people who really don't know how our brains work because they don't know us. I've seen these kids with so much potential not be able to understand these books filled with questions that are phrased in a way that doesn't make any sense to them. They can't learn that way. And the second that an actual human being who knows them and understands how their brain works elaborates and explains it to them, they immediately are like, oh, that's what they mean? They understand what's going on. It's unfair to just pigeonhole this entire generation of young learners and try to force them to all learn the same way when clearly it's not working. Kids' reading and math test scores are dropping. We need to trust that teachers know how to teach and that these books don't, because it is proven time and time again that's not working.
Thank you.
I just want to turn real quickly to Zoom because there's been some back and forth in the chat, and I want to make sure that folks who are in that space are able to speak up if they want to make any comments or questions. Great. I'll keep an eye on it. So we definitely do want to hear from folks. This is the time for it. If you've got comments or questions that you want to add. Yeah, yeah.
Just to piggyback on some of those ideas, like I said before, the curriculum is designed on purpose to exclude DEI, LGBTQ, and diverse authors. I think it's really teaching to the lowest common denominator. It doesn't have, the questions are all what questions. I want my kids to really be thinking about how and why questions and have a real sense of civic engagement. The behavior problems within schools have risen because the engagement is just not what it used to be, and especially at my son's school, Harbor Middle School. And the lack of engagement leads to behavior problems. It's a lot of passages, not whole novels, and we know the stamina needs to be built as kids get older to read an entire book. It really just teaches to the test, and I want my kids to really go beyond what's on a state exam or a screener. I really want them to be able to do deep thinking that connects to his life and his community. And I think everybody on page 42 is really not what equity is. As a teacher, you need to teach and tailor the curriculum to the people that are in front of you. And the people that are in front of you, the students that are in the classroom, are known best by the teachers that are teaching them. And every year I do not teach something exactly the same. I differentiate every year, and the autonomy to be able to do that, to really reach each student, needs to be valued in our district. I don't think it's equity to say everybody doing the exact same thing.
Thank you. Frank Marino, I see your hand. Do you want to share?
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I would like to share my thoughts on this resolution and share in support of it. I'm a teacher at MSA 39. I was a founding teacher of our school. And my colleagues have been really crushed by the mandates. I know there's a lot of politics, behind the scenes about why these curriculum were chosen and like why some schools had to be shifted to mandated curriculum in advance of city mandates, this, that, and the other thing. But I guess I just speak from a teacher perspective. Like, we used to be really collaborative with our curriculum across the grade, making sure that what we're teaching kids in science is, connected thematically to math and history and literature. Years of kind of like place-based projects that we created. All of that went away. And it's been a really hard time for our community to kind of process the big shift. And my colleagues are really hard workers. We're really excellent teachers. So we are team players and have worked. My ELA colleagues have worked incredibly hard to make Wit and Wisdom not suck for the kids and not be terrible to teach. They find it really boring, verbose, incredibly difficult to sift through all of the pages and pages of scripted lesson plans. I'm really sad for like math. our math teachers had created lots of projects that were memorable and made learning sticky. Things that kids would come back, you know, when they were in high school or college or even, and be like, I remember this project, that project. And, you know, for the past few years, it's just been like illustrative math workbooks. And our math teachers really want to do projects. And I think that that's a goal for our school next year. That, you know, admin has shared that with us, which I'm really excited about. But I will say that, like, you know, the mandates and I guess the culture in the district overall around curriculum has made it like kind of scary to speak out. Like on the teacher side, it just feels like teachers are not being heard, and you know, our professional capacity. You know, like I was really taken aback. Superintendent Alvarez, I know you're here. Like when you mentioned that you need a PhD to write curriculum, that's just not true. You know, that's not a thing. Like we do learn how to write curriculum when we go to school. We go to, you know, our programs. And I think, you know, curriculum that I've developed is really great. And so, and my colleagues have developed is really great. So I think another thing that's really sad is like these curriculum were chosen, you know, they're made by these corporations or like, you know, not for a national audience. And we have so much genius here in New York City schools. Like, why didn't we like enlist New York City public school teachers to make ELA curriculum, math curriculum for our kids? Why did we outsource that? So yeah, those are the things that I think, like as a district, we've been a leader in lots of different ways for moving our public schools towards, you know, integrated schools that are joyous, that really help all kinds of kids learn how to and grow. So I hope that we can be a leader on like loosening the grip of these curriculum mandates. So yeah, thanks for hearing me out.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to acknowledge that we've been flexing in our usual practices because we do know that this is a really important issue to many families in the community. And we appreciate you all coming this evening to talk with us about it. Thank you. Is there anybody else who's not a member of the council who would like to share a comment or question before we turn to council comments? Okay, thank you. Thank you all very much. So we'll turn to comments and questions from the council, and I see Jonathan has got his hand raised. Jonathan, go ahead. Sorry,
Yeah,
I took
Good charge.
So thank you. First, I just want to thank you know, all the community members. You know, Frank is a teacher in the district. Other parents and family members, just for their thoughtful take on what's going on and sort of passion behind what we need to do to best support our students. And I, you know, I want to first speak in a professional capacity. So I am a former DOE teacher myself, who wrote all of my own. I was a high school teacher. I developed and wrote all of my own curricula. I never really appreciated any of the scripted canned curricula and wouldn't have taught any other way. I have transitioned to being a teacher educator, and to support what Frank said, I prepare all of my future middle and high school teachers to craft and develop their own curricula, and make it meaningful. And a lot of my students are working in schools and districts that also have mandated curricula, and there's a lot of dialogue and discussion about how can you take that and adapt it to meet the needs of your students. So professionally, you know, I align wholeheartedly with almost everything that has been said in this room. And, you know, if we could have done what Frank suggested and called on the expertise of the math and the ELA educators across, you know, the DOE to develop the curricula rather than going outside for, you know, these more corporate curricula, I think that was the answer. But obviously previous administration missed the boat. And I remember when that was adopted, this was before I was on the council, or right as I was joining it, just being aghast at their choices and how unculturally responsive they were. So I am right there with all of you. But I also acknowledge in reading the resolution and where we're at is that like we have this curricula. And since then, I've talked to a lot of different schools and administrators and educators and just understanding, having been a career teacher and educator for, 25 years, there are people like me and many of you here who thrive and love to develop curricula and do it very well. There are other colleagues that I've worked with who are phenomenal teachers, but that's not where they thrive. And so, it's finding that balance in terms of how can we take curricula that exists and then support teachers who maybe don't want to write their own curricula to adapt it and tweak it and modify it to meet the particular and specific needs of their students. And, what seems to have really happened is this curricula was pushed on everybody and there wasn't enough time taken before rollout to allow teachers to understand it before they could figure out how to make it their own. And so we've had years of teachers and students and teachers' frustrations with it and teaching it in ways that aren't enjoyable for them, to their students, lack of engagement, where you lose that joy, you lose that spark and the impact on the students. And so, I just want to point to, and I know I'm going on too long too, but, in terms of the resolution, I understand a lot of the asks in terms of, the be it resolved. But I think that we want to, is going back to Ken's point, like we want to provide an ask that is actually actionable and meaningful, and then we can maybe create a different ask for the PEP. So in terms of us, the first be it resolved of removing all the curriculum mandates and the district, that for me doesn't seem like a tangible ask. Instead, really prioritizing kind of what Superintendent Alvarez sort of rolled out today with the curricula guides is a more deep and meaningful commitment to supporting educators in terms of how to adapt what they are, the curricula for their students, emphasis on the cultural responsiveness, emphasis on project-based learning, emphasis on critical thinking, all the things that all of you have been saying, I do believe align with what exists in those guides that Superintendent Alvarez had mentioned. The problem is that it hasn't trickled down yet to the educators in the building. And I think there needs to be a more explicit ask of how can we say flat out, teachers, you are not expected and we do not want you to script the curricula. We do not want you to follow a script. We do not want you to teach these lessons and activities verbatim. We want you to teach novels. We want you to explore. And so that's where I feel like we need to focus. And I think that we can get there, but I want something that is a tangible ask that there can be a response to and meaningful action going into the school. So sorry for going with.
I appreciate your background on it, Jonathan. I mean, I know that in addition to being a member of the council and parent, this is also your professional space as well. And so that perspective is really helpful. I'll let you, I should have been letting you do your job.
Okay. I'm the fill-in for Jonathan in many respects, I guess, and for Kim. But are there any other comments or questions either from council members?
Yes, I have something to say. All of this is kind of new to me. Like I've had my daughter explain to me like the reading stuff, and I actually recorded it because I was like really kind of shocked by it. But I didn't know that it was called Wit and Wisdom. I've never heard of it before, actually, and even in our parent-teacher conferences or anything. So hearing all of this and makes me really understand that conversation that we had earlier on that I'm going to re-listen to now and then see how she really understands and how I understand it too, so I can ask different questions now when I am at the school. So thank you very much for sharing everything and for being here and sharing all those comments. It's so helpful. I really wish to really try to expand that, to share that with other parents too, so they can have a deeper understanding.
Yeah, and thanks for that parent perspective as well, because I think sometimes we get very immersed in the conversation and it can be easy to lose sight of like what is common knowledge and what's not, and where families are coming from when they're approaching these questions. And so I know that was the goal of the family guides in particular, is to help provide some inroads, but there's sometimes a gap between what families have their hands on and what's available. So thank you.
Um, any questions from council members? I don't have any myself. Chinso, do you have a question? No. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I align with Jonathan. I think that I mean, I said it earlier, I don't like the wit and wisdom curriculum in particular. And also, I think that there are some ways we can think about the asks in the resolution a little bit more in a more targeted way. And so what I propose is, sorry, I'm just thinking this over as we're in conversation. Jonathan, I like the idea of potentially even splitting it into two, where maybe we have one resolution that's focused on what can be done at the district level and within the schools, and one that's more focused on procedure and decision-making at the PEP level and the city level. Those are two very different spaces of influence and action. And so that could be an interesting approach to take. I think
maybe there's a PEP member on here that could, I'm just kidding, Maddie. You don't need help us with that. But
Was that a real question?
no, not a real question.
Okay, yeah.
It's been a long meeting, so I just figured I would
we
say
need
it.
to lighten it up. No, I'm listening, folks. Yes. Lead the way, 15.
Saying Jonathan gets punchy as the meetings go on a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I think that's maybe as far as we can get today. I think we've heard a lot of voices. We've got the resolution in its current form. We've got some ideas that have been shared both by the community and by council members. And I think we take this back and we work on refining it in a way that feels like the resolution we want to support. Does that sound right?
Okay.
Yes, and Superintendent Alvarez, I know you had something you wanted to say.
Just before I read the statement that I have, Frank, if you're still on and any of the teachers are on, I want to formally retract my statement that I made previously and apologize for the unintended consequence of my word and action that I took in terms of speaking. So I apologize to you and any of the other teachers that I may have offended. That was certainly not the intent. And so I apologize for that. With that being said, I just wanted to read a statement that I've prepared in alignment to the resolution. So good evening, District 15 families, educators, students, and community members. I want to thank the CEC working group for raising important questions about curriculum, teacher autonomy, cultural responsiveness, project-based learning, and the unique needs of our students. The curriculum provides an academic foundation. Teachers provide the expertise necessary to bring it to life. District and school leaders must create conditions that allow them to do that well together. We share many of the values reflected in the resolution. Children do not all learn in the same way or at the same pace. Teachers must know their students, exercise professional judgment, differentiate instruction, and connect learning to students' cultures, languages, communities, and experiences. No commercial curriculum, as explained, can replace skilled teachers, strong relationships, or meaningful student engagement. Where we respectfully differ is with the proposed remedy. Eliminating common curricular expectations would not necessarily produce greater equity. It could recreate the inequities we're working to eliminate, particularly for students with disabilities, multilingual learners, students in temporary housing, students who move between schools, and students who have historically experienced inconsistent access to rigorous grade level instruction. District 15 is not asking teachers to follow a script. Our approach is implementation with integrity, not mechanical fidelity. Certain elements should remain consistent. Grade level standards, the intentional sequence of knowledge and skills, foundational literacy instruction, access to complex texts and tasks, and appropriate intellectual rigor. However, teachers must have the flexibility to adjust scaffolds, grouping, pacing, modeling, language supports, interventions, acceleration, culturally responsive connections and texts, and supports required by students' IEPs. This is not a one-size-fits-all instruction. It is a common instructional foundation with different pathways to success. Science of reading is not a product, publisher, or script. It is a body of research demonstrating the importance of phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, oral language, background knowledge, writing, and comprehension. It is also important to have grade level standards and high quality instructional materials. It is particularly important for students experiencing reading difficulties, students with disabilities, and children from historically underserved communities. This is fundamentally an equity issue. Children should not have to attend a particular school, have a particular teacher, or receive private tutoring to be explicitly taught how to read. Multilingual learners should receive evidence-based instruction while having their home languages, cultures, and experiences recognized as strengths in the classroom. Evidence-based instruction and culturally responsive teaching must work together, not in silos. A common curriculum also provides continuity for students who move between schools and a strong foundation for our many newer teachers, as described by Jonathan earlier. New educators bring tremendous energy, creativity, and promise, but they should not be expected to design an entire standards-aligned curriculum while simultaneously learning classroom management, assessment, differentiation, special education requirements, and even family engagement. That is why District 15 has restructured our support model through teacher ambassadors, professional learning communities, the learning labs, intervisitations, collaborative planning, and coaching cycles. Educators will have structured opportunities to internalize curriculum, study student work, anticipate misconceptions, and determine where students need additional scaffolds, intervention, acceleration, or challenge across their schools and across other schools in District 15. Project-based learning also remains central to District 15. We do not view curriculum and project-based learning as competing approaches. Curriculum provides the academic spine, while project-based learning allows students to investigate authentic questions, exercise voice and agency, collaborate, and connect learning to their communities. Our goal is to preserve and strengthen both. We must also examine recent assessment results honestly and carefully. 1 year of data should prompt serious inquiry, but it cannot establish a single cause. We will examine multiple years of disaggregated data, student work, screeners, progress monitoring, attendance, and feedback from educators, students, and families. If something is not working, we will change it, but we will make those decisions based on evidence. For these reasons, District 15 cannot support eliminating all common curricular expectations. We can and will continue improving implementation, differentiation, culturally responsiveness, professional learning, coaching, and feedback. Ultimately, the choice is not teacher autonomy or curriculum. It is not evidence-based instruction or culturally responsive teaching. It is not foundational skills or project-based learning. Our responsibility is to bring these elements together so every student receives rigorous, joyful, responsive, and equitable instruction. That is implementation with integrity. That's how District 15 leads through collaboration, inspiration, and empowerment. And that's how we continue to remain stronger together. And just on a last note, Frank, I wanted to be clear. The only mandate in middle school is illustrative math, the mathematics through New York City Solves. Elementary is the ELA curricula, whether it's Wit and Wisdom or HMH. Any other curricular decisions, so that everyone is clear, is made at the school level by the school leadership and its leadership team. Those decisions are not being mandated, not being pushed, or not being asked to be done by me, the superintendent, or anyone on my leadership team. So I just want to be clear on that because I've gotten a few questions about EL as the curricula or other curriculars in middle school or elementary school. There has been no mandate from District 15 superintendent outside of the ELA curricula, which is wit and wisdom and HMH for elementary, and illustrative math for middle school. Everything else are decisions made at the school level and are not interfered by me as a superintendent.
Thank you. All right, thank you all so much. We are way over time. I'm going to move to adjourn the calendar portion of this meeting, take a quick break. We've got just a couple things to talk about on the business side. We have a second for?
Second.
Okay, thank you. So we're adjourning the calendar meeting at 8:50 p.m. Thank you all again for joining us. Yes, thank you to folks in the room for being here tonight. Grab some food on your way out. Everyone take a break, and we will come back at 9 o'clock. Come back as soon as you're ready, and we'll get started as for this week. Thanks, everybody. Yeah. Denise, do you mind muting us for a minute while I Okay.
Unmuted.
You unmuted?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And so is Natasha. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and call the business meeting to order at 8:57 PM. Jonathan, you still with us? You are. Okay, thank you for sticking with us. I'll call the roll. I lost the roll. Ana Maria Aguilar, not here. Angelica Cesario, not here. Jonathan Davis. Here in the
Officially here, yeah, I'm here in spirit, but not officially.
Perfect. Ken Evie.
Here.
Angelica Jadunandan is not here. Kat McKenzie. Present. Katina Rogers, present. Ching Sa Shu.
Yes, sir.
And Kara Zwirling Moeller is not present. All right. So I haven't even looked at the Zoom. I'm assuming we're a bit of a smaller group now as we head into this second part. Yeah. Just a couple things that I wanted to talk about as far as internal CEC matters. Again, nothing we can vote on. So we'll change the agenda a bit. We'll vote on July's minutes next time. Thank you, Shanice, and also to Kara for putting this together. Really appreciate it. We need to pass a resolution declaring a vacancy since Kim stepped down. I spoke with Diana before the meeting, and she said that even without that resolution, it's okay for us to start soliciting applications. They'll go through FACE, not through us. So in the next, when I send out a meeting summary, I'll make sure that there's a clear indication of which spaces are open and how people can apply. I would also mention for the borough president appointee, bless for going through that process, but we have another vacancy in that structure now. And for the BP appointees, it's okay for a person to be at the same school as another council member, whereas for the regular members, elected members, there's only one person per school. So if you know someone in your school community who would be a good fit, you can point them in that direction. So we'll do that next time as well. What I did want to talk about were three things: liaison schools, community principals, and with that, roles and responsibilities, and then just some events that are coming up. So for liaison schools, Shanice, would you mind clicking through on this on the agenda? It just might be easier for people to see.
Yes.
All right, so I took a stab at working out some liaison appointments for the upcoming year with the vacancies that we have. So hopefully, we'll be able to spread some of these around. I hear what Kim said last time, but I do think I'd like to try having all D75 schools have a single liaison, just to see if we can get a better finger on the pulse of what the needs are among the co-located programs. So I'd like to propose that I take that on. That puts me with 8 schools, but I think the needs are a bit different, and so I think it's fine if that's okay with other members of the council. I tried to highlight all of the things that changed. So obviously, Kat, all of your roles would be new. But in doing that, I also tried to make a couple of things more logical. So like 442 and MS 88, I mean, those two schools are in the same, 44.
Yeah, you're right.
Am I right?
Yeah.
But it's actually 443. And, oh no, that's what I did. 443 and 295 are in the same building. So I shifted Kara over to 443 since she's also got 295. Kat, I tried to, give you schools that are also, if they're in the same like proximity with each other. 442 and K280 are in the same building. So I think those two might make sense together. Kim used to have those two. Ken, one of yours changed, I think. I can't remember if you had 447 before or not, and I can't remember why I did that.
I believe I did.
You did, okay, so that's great because I couldn't remember why I changed it. So if everyone could just take a look at any schools, especially any schools that have changed. And first of all, if you have a conflict of interest with that school that I forgot about, if your kid goes there, your spouse works there, whatever, just let me know because it's better if we, for some conflicts of interest, we obviously can't. If your kid goes to school there, for other things, it might just be preferable if you have a little more distance. So let me know if that's the case. If for any reason there's a real challenge with a particular school for you, again, that could be lots of different reasons. Just let me know that as well. A lot of these are kind of assigned at random. So I did want to keep as many the same as I could so that you can keep building relationships with the principals who you've already been connected with. So, yeah.
There was one, I've spoken with Kim, I'm not sure if she communicated it. A couple of her schools, I was interested in.
Oh, great.
Picking up and talk to her about them.
Uh-huh.
MS 88 was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit, it's fairly close in terms of, I don't know, I have a couple that are pretty close, be more accessible. I've spoken with her about that one particular, and I think there was one other that she had. 442.
Yeah, so I would say both of those schools I assigned to Kat, and so if you two could just switch, if you're open to a switch with either of Kim's schools, you can also say no thanks if you'd like to keep them. But maybe you two can connect and see what makes sense. And if you could just put it in comments in the document, kind of where you land on what schools you'd like to hang into. Okay, that'd be great.
Okay.
Because we'll have to, do we vote on this? I can't remember, but we need to approve it with everybody present at the council, so it's not final tonight anyway. So yeah, take this back, look through it, let me know anything that doesn't sit well and any changes we need to make. I'll make sure that the folks who are not here tonight have a chance to look it over as well. The next thing I wanted to talk about, so they kind of go hand in hand. I'll actually talk about the community principles first. I have really loved working in spaces where there's some kind of self-determined set of values that the group establishes together. I think in an ideal situation, we would, I wouldn't have drafted this in the background and brought it forward. We would all work on it together, but I think the realities and the constraints of what our group is make that not super feasible. So what I was trying to think about is, the chancellor's regulations tell us what we have to do. The bylaws explain how organizationally we agree to do it and what we will be bound to. Community principles are not meant to be something that's binding, but they are meant to be something that we can point back to say these are the tenets that we said we stand for. This doesn't really get into any educational questions. It doesn't get into what we think about the school district, the ways we think that curriculum, speaking of the conversation we just had, we can disagree about any subject matter that we're bringing forward. What I wanted to try and put together is something that talks about how we approach that work together. So for me, these are the things that matter. But again, this is a working document that I would love to have input on, both things that we can add and things to take away or change. So for me, this comes down to kind of three buckets. One is approach, one is actions, and one is communication. In our approach, I'd like to think that we assume good intent. When we sit down at a meeting together, I hope that we all trust that we are all bringing our best thinking, our best selves. We are not trying to approach anything in a malicious or subversive way. We are coming together to try and build something and to be part of these systems of governance for the good of our community. And here again, regardless of whether we agree or disagree, we agree to assume that each person is acting in good faith to try and support the needs that they see in the district. Alongside that, and I think it's really important that both of these go hand in hand, intent is not the same as impact. And so we can all come with good intent, but we also all agree to take responsibility for our actions. If I say something that is harmful to Ken, I have to take responsibility for that statement, regardless of whether I intended it to be harmful or not. And so sometimes even with that good intent, we may cause harm. When that happens, I hope we agree to take responsibility in appropriate ways, whether that means individually or as a collective. In terms of our actions and the work that we do, we agree to follow through on what we commit to do. We support one another by being steadfast and reliable in our commitments. When we say we'll do something, others know it will get done, and that if we can't, we'll communicate with the group as soon as we can to get something. And alongside that, we'll engage actively both during and between meetings. I know that it's a heavy lift and that we're all busy, but in order for us to make the best use of our time when we're together, agreeing to read materials in advance, review and offer feedback when requested, is a support that we can offer to one another and to our community. And again, we all go through different rhythms, and so there's going to be times when Kat will be super involved and I need to step back and vice versa. And that's where the communication piece comes in, which is next. When we need help, we will communicate with the group promptly to find support. This, I think we have all seen this happen organically in lots of ways. People get sick, our kids get sick. Caregiving responsibilities are a constant for all of us. Transportation gets messed up. We get overextended at work. Emergencies come up. When that happens, it's okay. We just need to let each other know. This is completely self-interested. I would love if folks would agree to check CEC email and WhatsApp messages regularly. We need to know that when we are sharing communication that it is being received. And so we need to know, whether that's, if we want to put time parameters on it, say we'll look at things twice a week, whatever feels right, or keep it looser, just so that we know what's expected. And if we'll be unavailable for an extended time, we'll let the group know. I'm going to be away for 2 weeks after tonight's meeting leading up to the start of the school year. I'll put an out of office message up and I'll let you all know so that if things do come up, community members have someone that they can turn to, and you all have people that you can turn to in my absence and vice versa. Because we all need breaks too. This is a lot of work and it's unpaid, and sometimes you gotta step back. So alongside that, I would also love to think about, this is a different tab in the same document, but I would love to think about like some key roles that folks want to take on. Obviously we have like the officer roles that we have to have, but there's also areas of affinity that I've seen emerge in people's leadership. Chingsa is an amazing community advocate. He's been connecting us with Sunset Park in ways that we've never been connected before. I appreciate that. And Angelica Cesario is really good at resolutions. And so if that's something that she can do with ease and fluidity, then that, that gives us some focus on what our lanes are. So these were just some roles that sort of came to mind for me. And again, this is something we'll talk about all together, but things like events, which Angelica J had been taking on, but might not have bandwidth for this year. The working group leads, resolutions liaison with elected officials. These are all things that would be helpful so that when things cross my email, I can pass them to the right person. So that's all. I'd love to hear how all of that lands. I don't want it to be like pushy or preachy. So yeah, opening it to you all.
Yes, my question is, what's ops and infos?
Oh, sorry. Operations and infrastructure. So we had a working group last year that was focused on everything that's not instruction. So like buildings and busing were the two things that were like foremost on the community's mind. Basil was leading that, and since he stepped away, we don't have a lead. So if you are interested in those topics, to take that on, you would be very welcome. If you're not ready, it's okay.
I don't know very much, but I know busing is a big thing in our community specifically, you know, when kids, their families move away, they still want to come to our school, and that's when the busing thing becomes a really big,
Yeah.
overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and you can feel it out. We don't have to start anything right away. The instruction and programming working group has been the one with the most difference of opinion and I think hopefully productive tension. Operations and infrastructure has been a smaller group that has been largely focused on transportation so far. The goal of a working group liaison is to hold space and to be a point of communication between the council and community members. So you can see over the next months as the other working groups are unfolding, if that feels like an area you'd like to take on, that would be amazing. Other, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that these principles are wonderful, that community
Can you
principles.
speak up so interpreters can hear you?
Yes,
Sorry.
yes. No, I think this is a great document. Community principles are always really important to define and to align around. And I think importantly for an all volunteer organization as well, to equitably distribute the labor. So, and like you said, I do think I personally appreciate that, you know, especially not taking on a formal officer role. In many respects, because of the time and not being sure that I'll be able to lean in at all times, being able to have a specific, as we discussed before, have a specific focus, the highest value add for the whole team, I think is a good opportunity for us to work together and be accountable.
Yeah. It takes a big giant set of questions and challenges and reduces it to something that's a little more approachable, I think.
So I'm good with the ones you mentioned.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
She has one thing that she would like to say if you guys have for next coming Lunar New Year. Because last year she was holding one celebration with another agency, but she is thinking if this is possible, she would like to have a big celebration and invite all different races, and also we can introduce what Chinese New Year's. So kind of because in New York City is very diverse. So we want to see at the same time we also will provide different interpreter or language service for all the parents who come to join the celebration party and see what also at the same time we can see what their needs. At the same time is the good connection for all the parents, not only to the Chinese parents, all the different races parents. They have all everybody can share their thought and their ideas. The same thing that we respect the Jewish holidays. So we would like to see is possible, then we can. She would like to provide the proposal for this.
Yeah, I think that would be lovely, and thank you for sharing it with us ahead of time at the meeting, before the meeting. Yeah, and it's especially good to plan ahead because I know last year we ran out of time. It was too close. I think this is great. I think that the key will be to make it feasible. Like, if you can find, whether it's with Rise Up or another organization or even a school that's willing to open up their celebration to the district.
You mean the space?
Yeah, or even like that's already organizing a Lunar New Year celebration, that's planning to bring in dancers and has some of the, because what gets difficult are the logistics.
And they have some program to provide,
Right.
to kind of attract the parents to come to join the party.
Right, so let's say that PS 169 is
Yes.
holding this kind of celebration. And they say instead of just being for PS 169
Yes,
families,
yes.
it's for anybody in District 15.
Yes. Yes.
Then
That's what
CEC could support with
Yeah.
with funding. And we could help a little bit with the logistics without having to, if we have to plan the whole thing, I think it won't happen because it'll be too much.
Yeah, I know.
So,
I know.
so if you can work with, maybe Angelica J or Anna, to find like a good school or community partner who would work with us to organize it, that would be perfect.
就说你跟他们那几个一起合作，然后看看你们这些组织或协行单位，他们也可以提供。那不是只有针对这个学校，所有 district 55个学区的学校，他们也可以有一些表演活动，有些比如哪些学校有跳舞啦，哪些是什么，你可以跟这些有些舞蹈学校，他们看他们愿不愿意来提供表演节目，然后吸引更多人来参与。
是的，我就是有做一些攻略，然后呢，我的想法是可以跟学校合作，或者是我们可以在公园。
对，他说就是你要先去找，看是跟学校或跟哪个机构协寻，然后他们再看看有多少预算资金可以协助你。但你要把这些全部规划好，说我已经找了哪些机构愿意提供什么样的服务。Okay, so you're gonna find out all with the connections.
Amazing. That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts on the documents? And then I have a couple of event related things to talk through too.
You can probably try to help Angelica with the events week.
Really?
Yeah.
Yay. I hate doing events. And so
I'm okay at it.
Amazing. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
One role, just in terms of key roles.
Yeah.
I've thought about, I think it could be shared, and if there are people with more, kind of facility with it. I do think that one of the issues that I have identified within my group of, fellow parents in our school or just public school parents is a lack of awareness about what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're
Sorry,
just kind of,
yeah, completely.
Toiling away and issuing these resolutions and not quite sure who knows about it and who's aware of these issues, like the issues that were raised this evening around the with wisdom and kind of a curriculum. And I think that we should have some focus, and maybe if I'm raising my hand, I can take the lead on some ideas on like our communications strategy and outreach and engagement on key issues with the right megaphones.
Would be amazing. Absolutely.
I don't know what that would be, but maybe just communications.
Yeah, that would be great. And it's one of those things where it feels like we're always treading water. And so to do something in a way that's more proactive and like grounded, sometimes it just doesn't happen. It slips through the cracks. So that would be great.
I have just one quick question about that.
Yeah.
We do have a social media handle.
Really?
Right, we've got an Instagram account.
Oh, look at that.
And
I haven't seen any action.
no action. No, you haven't seen it, so there isn't any. So
we haven't done that because we passed that resolution that said we weren't going to use it.
I was gonna say that.
Let's take that away. There's got to be another way for us to kind of get proactively in front of parents. So that's correct. It was the so we'll think about
biting ourselves and shooting ourselves in the foot.
what is the right way to move that forward.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Sorry.
No, I mean, it's a fair point. It is a good way to reach people. But, all right, let's think about it. That sounds great. All right, being mindful of time, I will, obviously this is an open document. I welcome comments, questions, thoughts as people kind of mull it over. I was also thinking in this document that maybe we keep a running tab of like open projects that we just haven't had a chance to address yet, like the PS 456 traffic safety plan that Angelica C put together, or PS 958 has a middle school project that they've been wanting to move forward, and it's on the back burner, but I always worry about like losing sight of it. So that's on there as well in the same document. Last thing is some events coming up. Lunar New Year, Chinsa spoke about. There's two other things coming up. One is at Center for Family Life in Sunset Park at their Rise Up, part of their Rise Up community. They are having a community event. They invited us to be there with some brochures, whatever information we want to share. That's on September 3rd and 4th during the day. Chingsa is going to go. You saw the brochures that Shanice printed. You saw the flyers in the envelope.
No, I was trying to say, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll give them to you. Sorry.
No, because I was gonna bring them.
Oh, because you're gonna go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, perfect. I'll show you what they look like.
Yeah.
Shanice is gonna go with you, okay?
Yeah, okay. Right.
Great. So I will connect you two and give you, Shanice, I'll give you the information on where it is and when. And if something comes up and you can't go one of the days, just trade me, it's no problem. But thank you so much for going. It's really great. Yeah. Senator Gennardis is also holding a community town hall and offered us a space to table there as well. That's not until October. But I want to say yes to as many of these things as we can. It's a chance to do what you said, get our name out there, have people out there talking about what we do. Angelica J is making some really cute little pencil bags with pencils inside, and we'll put a brochure with our calendar and stuff in it for the year. So, you know, something. But if you hear of things within your community where they're looking for community partners to come and just share information or whatever, we're always happy to do that kind of thing as long as someone can be there. And I don't think we can talk in more detail yet about events and budget. We'll need more folks at the table to be able to do that. That's where we are. Any last thoughts or questions? Okay. Yeah, it's very premature to mention this, but there will be elections again. It's another election cycle at the end of this school year. So do be thinking about if you hope to run for a second term. I hope everybody does. It's really great when there's some continuity and longevity. So just wanted to put that out there because you don't have to do anything yet, but it does sort of people. You don't have to run, you're good. Yeah, I think we just send an email. Yeah. You've done your obstacle course for years to come, I think. It does need to be, I think, renewed each cycle, but it's easier. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna move to adjourn. Seconds?
Second.
Great. So we will adjourn at 9:25 p.m. Thank you all so much for sticking with it. Jonathan, thanks for being here while your kids are around. Appreciate it.
Of course. Sorry, I couldn't be there in person. Great job.
Thanks for your help in that conversation. Appreciate it.
Thank
you
you
so much for staying on the whole time. We really appreciate your work. All right, and we will meet again September 15th here. Our October meeting is going to be at MS 428, the new Global Innovators building. It's your school, right? 4012 Fort Hamilton Parkway. One of the schools, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, September will be here. Everyone have a wonderful start of the school year. Enjoy the end of your summer.
Have a great trip. When do you leave tomorrow?
Friday.
Friday. Nice.
Thank you. I'm going to Banff and then Alaska. Yeah.
Have a good night.
I don't know how